seizure at 11 months old and stopped breathing. And I just came home from the football game. My daughter and my wife came up and said, something's wrong with Rachel. She wasn't a clinger. You know, she was always, she hands me to her and she's not breathing. And I'm like, so I start giving her CPR and call 911. And you know how you feel when you're saying something? You don't feel like you're amped up in your mind. Well, obviously I was yelling. And my wife got on the phone with 911. The operator said, tell your husband to calm down. And I remember that, but I was, in my mind, I was calm, but then when that ambulance started coming down Manatee Avenue, I could hear the start of it, and I'm giving her CPR, and she kind of went, and then threw up and started breathing a little bit. Then Mary Ann comes over, and, you know, because she heard the ambulance, and then my wife, the ambulance driver goes, do you want to drive her to the hospital, or shall we? I'm like,
oh, are you kidding
I
me?
said, that's what I said. I said, put her in that ambulance.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I got in with her, then my wife followed, and Mary Ann stayed, because my son, he was 2.5. He never even woke up. He slept through the whole thing. So Mary
Well,
Ann
that's
stayed
good.
at the house.
Probably
Yeah.
didn't need to witness that.
We get to the hospital, a couple hours later, she's fine.
Oh, yeah, that's what
Never
John
another
Braxton
issue.
said.
Well,
He said, you are
the only issue for the
mother.
next
And I
year and
went,
a
"You
half,
say
when she
that
got any
like
type
it's
of
a
fever,
bad
she was
thing."
right in the tub.
I know, really.
So, you know, every night we're checking her, and we're feeling her, and, you know, that was kind of weird.
And that means
Are we ready?
Right.
8:30?
I always looked at it. Where's, yeah, I would hear that all the time. Tell me. I go, well,
Ready?
means I'm doing my job.
Sharon? Ready?
Yes, sir.
All right, welcome to the Bradenton City Council meeting, 8:30 a.m. Wednesday, January 13th, 2021. We're here in our City Hall chambers. City Council chambers is open to the public. All are welcome to attend this meeting. Social distancing and screening will be enforced. Any member of the public wishing to comment may do so at this meeting. At this time, we'll call for the invocation. Be done by Pastor Todd Popple with the First Baptist Church of Palmetto. Thank you. Please stand.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Let's pray. Father, we come to you this morning. We thank you for your word that says in Psalm 118, this is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. So, Lord, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for this town, this city. Father, I pray your hand upon it, over these council members, over this room this morning. I pray that your wisdom would be over each of these members, over the agenda this morning, for your wisdom to be over this city. I pray for this city to be a light to the cities and towns, municipals around it. Father, we just ask that you would give your wisdom, your grace over it. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Please join us in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
And to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and we'll call the meeting to order. Mrs. Beauchamp, any proclamations or presentations?
We have no proclamations and no presentations this morning.
Okay, at this time, any citizens' comments will be accepted on agenda or non-agenda items. I don't have any cards that are up yet, but Glenn?
Tamara.
And when you come to the podium, after you leave, the next commenter person, please give a chance for them to clean the podium to keep everything as safe as possible. All right, Glenn Gibolina.
Can I get this on? Good morning, Glenn Gibolina for the record. Thank you so much. Good to see the new commissioners here. Bill again. Welcome. It's a pleasure and honor to work with this board, hopefully this year. You know, I'm all about housing. So you got a great opportunity to do some more affordable housing. I want to thank the new mayor for being at the Board of County Commissioners meeting yesterday. So it's good we're collaborating with the county. We have a lot of interest in common. And, you know, you guys are light years ahead of them as far as some of the housing initiatives that you have. You know, you've got accessory dwelling units for 10 years, and I've been working on with the county for 10 years to get them, and hopefully that'll come to fruition within a few months. So I want to, Mr. Carl has sent me a list of some surplus property. You know, all too often we forget the big picture of affordable housing. And it's great that you guys got developers like Marshall Gababi and some other developers coming in here doing the big boy stuff. And that's what we need for affordable housing. But on a smaller level, I think there's a tremendous opportunity on infill lots. I'm a big proponent of infill lots. Does a couple of things. One, brings up the neighborhood. A lot of times they're in these marginal areas, and when you put new houses in there, the opportunity to bring up that neighborhood and pride of ownership goes way up. So I think there's an opportunity to look at some of these lots that are surplus. You know, the city owns over 300 pieces of property, and some of them have been sitting vacant for many years, that I think we can utilize them more in the right direction. And hopefully, Bill, you and I can sit down before the next Affordable Housing Board meeting. You're on the board with us. And we can go over some of these and see if there's any potential. The other thing that I like that the city is doing is you're working with code enforcement on some of these derelict houses that really need to be torn down. And part of the problem with them is that, you know, the people that own these derelict houses, they can't afford to knock them down. You know, the fines are going up. So I know you're working with one over at War Temple that you approached the owner and said, you know, we're going to demo it, put a lien on your property, and now the neighborhood has a nice clean lot that can be developed either for affordable rental or sale. That needs to be done on a larger scale, and you've got the funds and the wherewithal to do it, and the expertise. You know, you guys get demo companies out there knocking it down. And the owners, a lot of times, they're too embarrassed to come to the city. They're poor, they're broke, they know they're in violation, and I think we can move in the right direction. So I really, really look forward. Pam, thanks for coming out to War Temple. It was a great event for mentoring program out there. It was an all-day affair. So welcome the new board members, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Glenn. Anyone else wish to speak under citizen comment? Anyone else? All right, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda.
Yes, at this time, we're asking for approval of items A through J.
Any pleasure of the board? A motion to approve, a second? All right. Any discussion?
I just had one question,
Okay.
if I could, please, and
Yes, ma'am.
perhaps Chief Bevan can answer it for me. We are looking at getting a freezer to store DNA evidence. Do we have any sort of backup source of electricity? Is there a generator that is going to be making sure that kicks in if we have a storm event or something of that nature? Yes, ma'am, we do. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion?
Is that located on site here or off site? Or do you prefer not to say?
No, it's on site.
Okay.
We actually, this is, I believe, our third backup. We have several backups to accommodate this, because that's just something that we can't lose a fridge, we can't lose what's in it, so. But they're expensive, so.
Thank you.
Okay, anything else? All right, let's start the voting in Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes.
Ward 5.
Yes.
All right, carries 5-0. Okay, moving on. Planning and Community Development. Mrs.
Yes,
Bochamp?
we have the first reading of Ordinance 3069, an ordinance of the City of Bradenton, Florida, providing for amendment to the City of Bradenton Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map, changing the future land use designation from conservation to suburban commercial corridor for a portion of property located off St. Lucia Drive and more particularly described in the attached Exhibit A, providing for applicability, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Now, this being a first reading, there's no action required today. What we would like to do is go ahead and set the second reading and public hearing for February 10th. And if we could have a motion to do so.
Okay,
Have
do
a
I-
motion to set for public
February
hearing
10th.
February 10th.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Coachman. All right, any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll start the vote in Ward 2,
Yes.
Ward 3,
Yes.
4,
Yes.
5,
Yes.
and 1.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, new business by department heads. Mr. Callahan?
Yes, this is a pretty exciting day to at least maybe see something happen that we have all dreamt would happen a long time ago. We have a request at this point for a development agreement with the city of Bradenton. As I'd indicated in my agenda memo, the property we're talking about is 420 Manatee Avenue West, which to a lot of us old timers is known as the First Union Building, or if you're really older than that, it's the Southeast Bank Building. Those are,
How about those of us that were older than that? What was it before then?
The arcade,
I'm not sure what it was.
hotel.
It was the first Manatee Bank, right?
Okay.
Manatee, okay, so. I knew
So we've
Mr.
got some
Gallo
real
was
old
gonna,
timers out there.
I knew Mr. Gallo was gonna say something, so.
We all know that that building has been worn out over the years, and I think indicated through various discussions that we've had previously, even in the DDA before CRA, was that this was a catalyst site and something desperately needed to happen when we were talking the same vein as we were talking about the River Park Hotel. It was under the ownership of Manatee County, and Manatee County last year, 2019, decided to surplus that property and take it out for RFP. When there was a successful respondent was the 920 Manatee Avenue Associates. With their presentation to Manatee County, they had said that they wanted to build workforce/attainable housing on that site, and they actually won the bid and were allowed to purchase that property with a land use development agreement that said it needed to stay as workforce attainable housing. So that is still attached to the property. They have come to us now to ask for some assistance in helping to make that happen. And the way we do that here is a development agreement. And we've laid out the terms of that development agreement. I want to go through briefly, and then the applicant is here, or the requester is also here to answer any questions. There are two separate agreements. Today we are only dealing with the one agreement pertaining to the city of Bradenton. In the future, at the next meeting, there is also a request through the CRA for a TIF arrangement, but that cannot be voted on today by y'all, that it can only go in front of the CRA. So the development agreement pertains to two particular things in total. One is really impact fees and utility connections requesting to be waived, and also parking ground lease arrangement. Remember, it's not our property. We don't have any control over that property. They did go to planning and zoning and got a zoning letter from Myra, I believe, indicating that this building was appropriate for that site, but they would still need to go in front of planning for still some of their issues, still need to meet form-based code. There are things that still need to happen. You're not agreeing to what the size of the units are today or things like that. You're just looking at, are you willing to aid and assist this project? So what they're looking for is impact fee waivers, and as I'd indicated before on that, we can do nothing with school impact fees. Those are always there. The impact fees that would be on a building like this are still in play unless, of course, the city council decides to say that they're not, and they have grounds to be able to do that under the workforce attainable housing. And if you look at the way we've handled that in the past, Manatee Inns is the most recent example to that. Manatee Inns, the city council agreed to waive those fees for the impact fees and utility fees based on the fact that it was attainable in workforce. A certain amount of those fees would be waived regardless because of the impacts of a 47,000 square foot building be there previously, but not roads and some of the others. There would be some utilities that would be done normally anyway. So that request is out there. The big request is you can't build a building like this without parking. If we want things like this to happen, trying to provide the number of spaces is very difficult and expensive, and a lot of times removes the affordable workforce housing component when you need to step up and build, like we saw at $16,000 to $20-some thousand a space, make something from affordable to almost unaffordable to do. We have available parking in the area, and the request is to utilize two different areas of ours. The area of the post office is one. You know, our post office parking lot is terribly underutilized, and in which case they are looking to use a portion of that. They want to pay us rent for a period of time for that. They want to make improvements to that lot. What I've asked Mr. Allen to do, because I think it is significant in the rent situation and everything, how much money they will be putting into that lot for those spaces. Also, a critical feature to that, which was very important to us, is you can't just wipe out the lot in total. We needed to maintain spaces up front. It is a post office parking lot as we're concerned, or people who use the post office for walk-in, for their pickup of their mail, for using their rental slots. We have retained 15 spaces in the front of that lot along Manatee Avenue that are public spaces and will be improved by the developer, but ultimately will be ours, and they can, and will not fall under this lease and will not be segregated, or will be segregated. And it will also maintain the mailbox drop-up, so that people who have come and got used to just dropping off their mail at the drive-thru will still be able to do that. The other piece of that is that they will be looking for 60 spaces in the city center garage. What I'd indicated to the group was you would be able to get in the garage through a permit process, absolutely, not reserve signage, not saying reserve. Because one of the things that's critical to us in this city center garage is to use multi-purpose parking, meaning not all people park there all day long. And you can really increase the functionality of a garage if you have people staying primarily at night and people who use it primarily during the day. And our employees downtown will be using it primarily during the day. Residents of our downtown area certainly are most likely to be using it at night, some during the day. They won't go anywhere, but that's where you dual purpose a garage and get a lot more functionality out of it. Some of the things associated with that permit parking, the rate for that permit parking would be the equivalent of whatever we do for other residents in downtown. So one of the things I talked to y'all about is creating a resident rate, an employee rate, and those things once we start charging for the garage, and it would be the equivalent of that rate. The other thing that's probably that's maybe the single most important thing to me, that only amounts to a small paragraph in this agreement, is as when I looked at this agreement, I try to look out not 5 years, not 10 years, maybe 20 years, maybe 30 years into a long-term agreement that says, if indeed we determine that parking lot, and maybe the surrounding areas by that point, could be better served by another development, high-rise condos, another affordable housing project, whatever it may be, City Hall, could be anything, that we have the right to go to them and say, we want to move you, and we will find accommodations for those parkings that are similar to what you have in that lot. And I think that gives us the freedom to say we're not hamstrung forever. To put it into a singular parking lot forever, I think creates a problem for us, because it is a very visible site and is a very prominent location in the downtown area. So with that, we have the ability to move them from that site, should it make sense for all of us. I mean, they don't want to stand in the way. It would just be finding consistent parking. It may be, by that time, it may be all in the city center garage, who knows? But that's just to allow some flexibility for us for the long term. Those are the primary things about this agreement. As I indicated, it is attainable housing, and there is a paragraph in here that talks about attainable housing, that it must be attainable housing. The reason we don't say more of that in our development agreement is because they already have a development agreement, which I had attached, which is Manatee County's development agreement with them, that says it has to remain attainable, affordable housing. And that goes along with the land, and that's part of something that in our agreement says we can enforce that on them as well. The county can enforce it, we can enforce it. So that's why you don't see a whole separate affordable housing agreement, but there is that from Manatee County. So with that, I think that's from our perspective. I think Mr. Allen has a presentation he'd like to give. Probably some of it is repetitive, but it's coming from them versus us.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Callahan?
If I-
Yes, Ms. Coachman?
You were talking about 60 spaces from the city garage. Just to let me know, how many spaces total are?
There's 400 public spaces. They will be getting, I think, 90 spaces, whatever they can create over in the post office out of the space they have allotted. That's their configuration, and I think they can tell you that. How they configure that to maximize parking. They may narrow it down, do the things as long as they make legal spaces. That's what they have to maintain. That's to maximize their count for their potential residents. But our 60 is 60 of 400 potential public. Over there, it's, if you look at the map that we have, there's 3 different little parcels in that post office lot. One is the parcel furthest to the north, and that's where the post office parks their trucks. That is our lot, that we have a lease with the post office. That, again, when I talk about future development, it makes sense, because that's a series of 5-year leases with the post office. But when we did our last one, I started looking to the future again, and we have a 90-day out period. All we need to do is notify the post office that we want to be out of there. We give them 90-day notice, and they would need to be out if that was the case, if we were looking at the same type of development we're talking about that needed more space. So 60 of 400. Currently, we probably use from us maybe 120 of those spaces overall with our employees and things. If you look over there right now, even with it being free, the top 2 floors are completely vacant. And pretty much the drive aisles going up are vacant. So I think there'll be space, and like I said, to dual purpose the garage for daytimes and nights makes a lot of sense. So that's what we're looking to try to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else before we?
Yeah.
Oh, Patrick? Mr. Roth?
So the, looks to be like there's about 90 spaces in their proposal with their entrance coming in and out of 8th. Is that, how are they going to control that? Are they going to have a
Gated.
key?
Gated.
Okay, and then for the portion down to the, for the post office parking, the 15,
you
looks
put
like
this-
we're going to want people, huh?
I was going to put the picture up.
Put them on the picture.
Okay. Looks like we're gonna want people to come in off of Manatee Avenue, just for the way the slots are lined up, and then come out on 8th. Is that true?
That's correct.
Okay, and we don't think that's gonna be a traffic flow problem?
It would be if it was 100 spaces. I think 15 spaces, and you realize the number of people that come out of that go to the post office. 15 is gracious considering the number of people, except for maybe at
Oh, no, I
Christmas.
don't, I'm not numbering, I think the spaces are correct. I go there, it's.
No, I mean the traffic then coming out of there.
Yeah.
If it was heavily traveled, I think it would be. But remember, a long time ago, we made sure that that was right turn only coming out of there onto Manatee Avenue.
Yeah.
So people not trying to cross all the way over, which started creating the problem when 8th was up there. People used to try to go from 8th all the way across 3 lanes of traffic and make a left-hand turn on 9th, and that doesn't work very well. So I think it will be a little bit of a choke point, but there's not a lot of traffic on 8th.
Well, and then my thought too of knowing that intersection well, we're having people enter it from Manatee Avenue 64 when that's the turn lane for Palmetto.
Right.
Do we consider that to have any kind of impact?
I can't picture, like I said, it is such and this is only for those 15 spaces is where they're coming in. This
Right,
is such a
right.
minor amount of traffic overall.
Okay, that's been considered though.
Yeah.
It's okay. And then I know.
Because they currently come in off of there for the 100 spaces, potentially.
Okay. I know I usually go around the backside and come in through 8.
Well, those of us who know, I mean,
Yeah.
there's ways into there.
Yeah. And then, also, I think, do we still, the grass strip parking on the other side of 4th, the area that's being used, kind of unofficially for, I think, employees, is that city?
No, on 4th, anything on 4th where the roadway was, that's why we allowed the post office folks to go to our lot for nothing at one point. They were creating a horrible situation because they weren't parking in the roadway, they were parking up on the sidewalk.
Yeah.
They would put 2 tires up on the sidewalk and completely block the sidewalk because they'd heard that they wanted to be able to allow traffic to access there. Well, that's no better to park. So we let them come into our lot. Well, once we get, and it's a ways out, we'll have to notify them that they are not going to have spaces to park here, and they will need to find alternative parking for their employees.
What is the status of that property on the other end of 4th?
That's what I described before. The piece that's up on the top here, that's what I described before. It's underneath the lease right now to the post office where they park their mini mail trucks.
No, I'm not talking about I'm talking the other side of 4th.
The other side of 4th is the chiller plant.
Okay.
Manatee County's chiller plant's on the other side.
That's county owned.
Yes. There are plenty of vacant lots around there that maybe could be utilized. Also, I look at the opportunity for the employees to to maybe work a deal with the players who has probably 200 empty spaces on any given day.
During the day.
During the day. So I think there's opportunities there, or the city center garage to be like everybody else that comes down here and works in parks could be there as well. We've been very gracious to them, but when the needs arise that you need to do something different, that's when things change.
Question?
Mr. Sanders, yes.
So along Manatee Avenue, I thought you told me we're keeping that for the post office.
That's correct. The yellow is
And I thought there was 20 spaces.
I think 15 is what it shows on the map.
15. Is that in our agreement with them or lease agreement with them?
Well, no, they will improve it. We can make it whatever number of spaces we want, but I think, because it's
Really?
our space.
Well, you can't make,
You can make
you
it.
can't make 30 spaces out of 20
No,
spaces.
you have to make them legal spaces. You
Okay.
can make them whatever number of spaces you can make that are legal spaces we can put.
And that's 15.
That's what we're currently showing, yes.
Okay. So how will the traffic flow come in? So that's for public parking for the post office.
Yes.
So how will the traffic flow come in? It'll come in off
Come in
Manatee
off
Ave?
Manatee, make a right-hand turn into that lot, parking any of those spaces.
The way it is now, up close to the, so
Road.
the one behind, so where were the tenants of the new
Come in
building?
off of 8th.
They'll come
They
in off of
further
8th,
down- They come in down here,
Yeah.
off of 8th.
yes.
And that's where they exit now.
So they won't be able to make a right turn off of Manatee at that first exit?
They will be when after they come out, of course. They could make a right-hand turn. They could make a left-hand turn and go back to the north, or they could.
No, I
make-
mean, going
Oh, off-
west on Manatee Avenue, they'll not be able to make a right-hand turn at the first exit to get in?
not where you come in.
They'll have to come in around back.
That's gated as well. There's a gate. If you look
I
at.
understand what it is now, but I'm saying what's.
No, there's a fence. There will be a fence that separates the public parking from their private parking. So you're seeing a drive aisle that won't exist when that fence goes up. There will be no access to that back lot off of Manatee.
That'll be gated.
Gated.
To get exit out there.
Limited ingress and egress that will be off of 8th.
So if I'm coming in and I'm wanting to drop off mail at the mailboxes in the rear, how would I would come in at the second exit closest to the post office, drive all the way down? How will that work?
Okay, right now, if you want to go inside, you park wherever you want in those 15
Well,
spaces.
in those 15 spaces?
Yes. If you are trying to go to the mail drop-off site, they are currently located here,
Right.
and I have requested that they be moved to here,
Right.
so that you can drive through the same way, drop off your stuff in the exact same manner that you do now, within 30 feet of the roadway, drop off into your pull-down mailboxes, and then turn right onto 8th.
So now we've created more traffic off Manatee Avenue with drop-off mail.
We have not created more traffic, absolutely not. We
Well,
have.
sure,
there
because
is-
now you're going to the back of the lot, exiting out left and not coming back out?
What I'm saying is, it's not more, it may be handled differently. They may now
Well,
be
you're
forced.
moving the traffic flow from the mailboxes out to Manatee Avenue.
Yes.
But it's still in the parking lot. It's still in the parking lot, and you still have a choice to go left or right when you come out, just like you do in the back. I use that post office quite
understand,
often, and I've never seen 15 spaces full,
I
except
never
for
have
maybe
either,
Christmas
but there's
time.
And
another
I've
60
used-
spaces behind it, that's why you don't.
And they're
see
not full either, a
I
lot.
understand it, I drive
I
through there
use the
quite
drive
frequently.
aisle. I've never encountered anybody in front of me dropping off mail.
No.
I mean, that's just, I use that's the closest one to me.
I agree-
that's
I agree with
mailbox.
you what you're saying.
It is creating potentially a greater congestion than maybe exists now, but because of the complete, almost lack of traffic on 8th, it is should not be a huge issue.
Correct.
Well, you're gonna have more traffic if you put 60 cars in there.
But they are only they're coming in and out of 8th, and then
Well,
and
but
they are
they-
dispersing currently like the current parking lot is. Those people will either be able to go north or south, either one. They will have the option. 8th is not one way. You can come out of there and go north. So they will have the option of going north. They will have the option of going to 4th or to 3rd, down to 7th. There's a lot of different options for those folks coming out, as opposed to the people that are coming out of just the 15 spaces.
Well, 4th, we already have a problem with the postal trucks parking there that we haven't addressed.
No, we don't. They
Which-
don't park there now. There's no parking on 4th.
Not on 4th, they're on 9th. They're on Ninth, and they block the view of turning out on Ninth from
We have
Fourth.
requested that they not do those first 2 or 3
I
spaces.
know, but that was a year ago, and it hasn't been resolved.
When I noticed before, I noticed the first couple spaces had been vacated, usually had been vacated.
It's a problem right today.
Okay.
And that's gonna make it worse.
This is not talking about the post office. This is nothing to do with the post office and/or their ownership of their property and their parking considerations. This is.
No, it has to do with public safety.
Yeah, why don't we let
And we
the,
can address that separately, Mr. Sanders. That can completely be addressed separately with the post office. We can sit there and say, your lease is done if you don't do this. Your
so
lease
we can
with us
work on that.
your-
Let's
your
work on
trucks.
that and a separate thing, but
That
let's
could be a
get the, if
separate
it's all right, Mr. Sanders, let's get the applicant up and give us some information, maybe that'll help answer some of the questions. So, thank you. Mr. Allen and Mr. Bartz? Give them just 1 second to clean the podium. Just while you're coming up, Mr. Allen, I just wanted to, my wife found this book at the Goodwill yesterday, so I just happened to be going through it last night, and we're talking about the history of that building. Well, in 1923, that was the Arcade Hotel, and then it was torn down in 1959 and 60 to become the Southeast Bank Building, which was formerly Manatee National Bank. So obviously, none of us up here would remember that, but I believe Mr. Gallo probably would remember that.
I don't remember the
From
arcade hotel.
1923, and it's got a great picture, so it's funny how things come up when you're not even expecting them, but, and yes, this is the first time I've had to use glasses to read anything, so I want to make sure, but.
I don't remember the Arcade Hotel. I do remember the bank because it had a very beautiful mural of Hernando de Soto and the conquistadors landing where Dr. Suggs said they landed and the federal government agreed. So,
All right, thank you, Mr. Allen.
Good morning. To correct you on one thing, I think Mr. Gallo did the first fire inspection there
Oh, okay.
back then, so. Well, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity for allow us to present this this potential project and development agreement for our community. My name is Ron Allen. I'm president of NDC Development and NDC Construction Company. We are the owner of the property. If Carl went through and did a wonderful job of giving a little bit of the past, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that this morning, other than to reiterate to Carl, the intent for this project is to be attainable housing, which we feel is very important and necessary in our community. Unfortunately, it's hard to do because of cost. Trying to match up cost today with rental rates that are affordable and attainable for the workforce in our community is a difficult task. What we have up on the screen first is I want everybody to see what we look at every day.
Beautiful.
I like it under. It's kind of ironic because when I arrived here in 1984 into Bradenton, my office was in this building, and so it's kind of ironic that now I'm back here talking about saying it's really outlived its useful life and needs to be turned into something completely different. When we purchased the property, as Carl mentioned, it was based on the fact that we were going to build attainable housing, and that is a requirement from a development agreement we have with the county, which is recorded in the county courts or the county circuit dockets, so that runs with the land. So this is something that we're pushing and is going to work very well for us. This is the site plan for the building, and I'm not going to go and spend a lot of time on the building because we're going to be back in front of you all when we get to site plan approval, but this is sort of just an overview to share with you a couple of issues. One is the first floor has 5,000 square feet of retail on the corner. If you notice, that's the corner of 9th and Manatee, which will give us, I think, the opportunity to do something special on that corner because it has such great visibility as part of the project. Let me back up one step. When we first purchased the property and determined it was attainable housing, we had had much contact over the last few years with a number of young organizations here in the community. The Manatee Young Professionals, the county actually has a young professional group within theirs. And we sat down with them over a period of charrettes and roundtables to really define what it is important to them from a user standpoint, for not only the amenities in the building, but from the rental rates, from those kind of things. So we spent a lot of time. Realize Bradenton, I want to give a shout out to Johnette for helping us get through that process, or go through that process of bringing those people together. It's another thing that Realize Bradenton does that people don't really see, is they're actually trying to help we developers bring to the community what's necessary and what works. So this the first floor is basic, your lobby area, some of your mechanical kind of things. We're also connecting the retail component of this to the Manatee County chiller system. Which is a requirement when we purchased the building. So we're actually supporting the county in their systems for HVAC. You'll notice in the middle of that site plan build of the building to the upper part of the diagram, we are putting an inside very large bicycle storage area. One of the things that we found from our forums was that they really wanted a place, and if you've ever lived in an apartment, you understand that most of the time you have to carry your bike up your stairs, and it becomes a hanger for your coat in your apartment. And so what we said is it's real important for them. They want bikes. They want to be able to be mobile downtown with the bicycles. So we've created a section that is inside secured. It's actually air conditioned, so which will house their bicycles and allow them to traverse through the community or downtown. We also have 23 spaces on site, including a dog park, as you see on the back side. On the right side of the drawing is a dog park complete with dog wash and all those kind of things. Because one thing we have found out about the young professionals is they like to have pets, and those pets need to go somewhere. And while the Riverwalk is a wonderful place to walk your dog and do those kind of things, when you come home from work, sometimes you don't really want to walk the dog. You want to take him down and let him do his business. So we created a dog park in there. Part of our agreement with the county also is currently the property appraiser's office parks their cars on what was vacated 4th Street on the right side of this site plan. We have made an agreement that we are those 10 spaces along that side are dedicated to the property appraiser's office under a lease for daytime hours. So, and that Mr. Hackney and our organization worked together and came up with an understanding and agreement which the county has approved. So they'll park their vehicles during the day there. One of the things it does for me, you talk about safety and security, right now that throughway is not a very nice way to travel. They park in there and they have to come out onto 9th Street right at the light there, which has created some big issues. So both the county, the property appraisers, and FDOT have been very excited about this of this arrangement that will remove that cross alley that goes between 10th and 9th.
Nice.
Ron, going back, what are the other, I saw you had the 3 handicap. What's the other 10? What's their intended use?
Well, the other 10 are going to be for the retail users.
Okay.
And then on nights and weekends, we would also have the 10 spaces from the property appraisers for those retail spaces.
Okay.
Yeah, so those will not be tenant drop. Now, there may be in today's world, there may be an Uber Eats or a Grubhub drop-off space or those kind of things, but the majority of those spaces in that area are designated for the retail use that we haven't gone that far yet.
Just knowing human beings the way they are, is there going to be management on staff or something? Because everyone's going to want to just jump in, jump out. and use them.
There's no doubt. The other fortunate part about that is it's something we're going to have to police as an organization. But if I sign a lease with a retail user, that retail user is going to have me enforcing it anyway.
Yeah.
So the other nice feature about this is if you go straight across the street, I mean directly to the west, is the county parking garage, which has 125 spaces of public parking that are pretty busy during the day, but that's not really where we're worried about our retail user. That's at nighttime. And we've had some discussions with the county. I won't tell you that we've agreed to it, but we've had some discussions about the county about also asking for them for opportunities for nighttime passes. One of the nice things we also have here is because the design of the building is really for those downtown young professionals and downtown professionals that may want to work downtown, live downtown, and we expect a number of those. I think we had 30 that expressed interest from just the county group. They already have a parking space in that garage as part of their employment. So we can maybe double dip, and that's, I think, back to the question of how many spaces are we going to end up needing. We don't know exactly, because if we got 30 of those individuals in the building, that's 30 spaces I don't need from a user standpoint. I still need my approvals because of what's required with the code for parking, but I may not need 30 spaces in the parking garage because they're already in the county garage. So that's why we're sort of still trying to maneuver through that process. Did that answer your question?
No, it does. I just think that, like I said, knowing people, there's going to be those that are entitled why should I walk over to the
Right.
Yeah.
the post office when there's 10 right there? For me.
The other difference, the difference is when you're renting them space, you have some authority over what they do and what they don't do. That's a repeat offender. That is somebody who we would ask to leave the building.
Okay. Well, and then also, I mean, the whole intent and purpose, so this is kind of new urbanism here, where, live, work, and play, that hopefully a lot of these people would decide they don't even want a car.
Sure.
They.
Yeah, I mean, at my age, I can't even say the words that there's people out there that don't want a car.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people that don't.
Right.
We just not, where our mindset isn't to that. But the answer is you're absolutely correct. We may have some that will probably ask us for a reduction in their lease amount because they don't have a vehicle. I mean, that's something we will have to anticipate as we go forward.
Mr. Sanders?
Talking about these spaces for the appraiser's office, will those be by permit only? I mean, how do you keep me from parking in there?
Well, that's, the nice part is they start their day at 7:30. So the retail users, it won't be open yet.
Yeah, but you also said retail and office space. Where are those people going to park?
Well, but it'll be retail. I will just tell you, its location and its rental rates will put it in a retail, not in an office situation. The bottom line is we will sign it, and we will monitor it. If it got to a point where people were doing that, we have no problem with towing even one of our own tenants.
Well, why wouldn't you gate it with a fob to open it up?
Well, if you look at the parking lot area, it's almost impossible to gate, because one of the things that both police, fire, and public works will tell you is there's no way to stack cars onto the street, and that's where you would have to put your gate and fencing. Those people would have to be opening their window trying to figure out how to get into that gate from the street, and that's not acceptable under code. So the answer is we will monitor it, we will police it, and it's up to our responsibility to live up to our lease that we have with the property appraisers.
Well, in the downtown areas too, Mr. Sanders, that I think if you go and visit a lot of the established downtowns, there's signs that say between 7 and 5, private parking, 5 after,
Correct.
community parking, or how it is did. And it will be important for the developer to make sure that that's monitored and
Yeah, and we have
managed.
we'll have a building manager on site at all times, so I don't perceive that, but I appreciate your point, but I'm not sure that there's much else we would do. The other thing too is we don't want to create, if we can help it, we don't want to create this downtown, which is a real walkability situation, and then make it look like it's a fortress. You want that invitingness, both from the retail component and the apartments, that this is a walk around community. So I think that's another piece of that. Did that answer your question?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm going to go through, this is our rooftop space, which is on the 12th floor. We went through, again, those forums and came up with things that they wanted. They wanted the ability to do yoga. They wanted to have a gym upstairs. They wanted outside seating areas.
Ron,
I'm sorry, I'm still on the first floor. I apologize.
Yeah.
I'm talking, so this is just a blow up of the first floor. This is a typical layout for a floor. Consists of 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. I will tell you that once you get above the second story, the views get wonderful. They're because of the corridors that exist on the roadways and everything else. They have great water views all the way up through floor 11, which is the last residential floor. Then we go to the rooftop, and I'm sorry I got ahead of myself because I'm really excited about the rooftop. And again, as you can see from there, the left side of the screen, we have gym areas, we have meeting areas. The other thing that they were looking for was yoga areas and a place where they could go up, as we will and expect to have some that will work from home. There's some quiet areas up there that you can go in and plug in your computer at a desk or just take your laptop to a desk and be able to work with some spectacular views 12 floors up out over the river. We also have a very large outside area. Pools were not important to any of the folks we talked about, which is sort of different than our traditional apartments that we do. They wanted more of the gathering areas, sunning areas, fire pit areas, and some grilling areas, so we've sort of put those on steroids, which will allow you, we have 2 separate grilling areas. We have the big fire pit area and the sunning area. Again, these all overlook and have a view of downtown, which I think is spectacular, and the water. It's just a great, nice feature looking north and west.
Mr. Sanders?
I think that's great, but don't we have an issue at the top of the hotel across the street, which you have an interest in, that with having that? Fire department hasn't approved that, right?
Fire department hasn't approved what? I'm
To
sorry.
have open flame on the rooftop.
Well, no, open flame is permitted. It's actually, if you go to the Spring Hill Suites or to the Oak and Stone, there's open flames. The difficulty is you have to have natural gas coming into the building. What they prohibit is what you will see, the heaters and fire pits that use the 5-gallon propane tanks. It's the transportation of the propane tanks that are the issue.
So they would have natural gas.
Correct, and we have natural.
Piped up to there,
Correct.
and that's been ran by the fire department.
And that's what we currently have at Spring Hill and Oak and Stone in their fire
Okay,
pits.
I haven't been up there in the last few months.
Since it's been cold.
Since it's been
they're
cold
running.
and COVID, but before there was an issue that it wasn't allowed, so.
Yeah, that's only from the temporary heaters that you see, which are sort of the stacks that roll around, because they have a propane component, and propane is not permitted. So.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this is our sort of our building plan. This is sort of what we envision the property looking like. We think it fits very well on that corner. I won't tell you that these are the exact colors. We'll bring those back when we do site plan. We're still getting through that process on colors, but we wanted to give you a massing of what this looks like. As you can see on the very top, those are the open areas of the sky deck that we'll call it. But we're real excited. And then the corner, that's looking at the corner of Manatee Avenue and 9th. The retail is sitting on the right-hand side. So that's just a quick depiction of what we think the building massing and features are going to look. Now we're going to move to the parking lot, and which is the purpose of our one of the main purposes of our development agreement. I want to talk to a couple things. I'm not going to go through in a lot of detail. When we talk about traffic, Councilman Sanders, and we talk about, are we making it worse, making it better? We're really not changing any of the dynamics. If this was a busy area, all those spaces would be used now, and it's not, but they're already there. So the approval or the thought process is what's there, we're not changing. All we're doing is capturing 92 spaces that we're going to be able to gate and include that'll come in off of 8th and go out on 8th. When you come out onto 8th for our residents, they're going to be able to go south to Manatee Avenue. They're going to be able to go north to 4th Avenue. 4th Avenue can take them to 9th, so they can head over the bridge. 4th, they can then also head east to 7th and take 7th down to where the players are, the players' facility, and take 3rd then to whatever they want to go. So there's multiple opportunities for those residents when they come out of the parking area. The 15 spaces that exist on the southern side, I didn't quite catch your point, Councilman Sanders. Right now, the mail kiosks sit on the north side, farthest on the lot. Bringing them down to this area we're talking about for the parking, I didn't really understand why I was bringing it to Manatee Avenue, because it isn't. It's still within the parking lot.
Well, if I want to drop off a letter, I'll come in to the west near the post office, drive through these, drop off my mail, and then come back out. I can either go left or right.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
So by doing that, with the mailboxes in the back, they're more inclined to use 4th or 8th Avenue to 4th and go out that way toward the players. But, so I think that you're going to create more traffic for drop-off mail by putting it that close to Manatee Avenue.
And that's your opinion. I don't know that I share it, because I don't think it changes. I think the people that are dropping off letters are dropping off letters. I don't know that number is going to change much.
Right.
I do understand what you're saying about it changes a little bit of the traffic pattern, but I think it actually may help it, because it gives people that opportunity. Most people in Manatee County that come in to drop off letters there that aren't familiar with downtown, they're not heading north on 8th. They're coming right back out into Manatee Avenue. The other thing that occurs now is that by 8th being the exit for the post office public spaces, we'll call it, are further away from that intersection, which really allows then a little less of that Frogger movement that you have to do if you're trying to head south in that process.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Allen, are you saying that when people come in for the public post spaces that we're going to have, and they get to 8th Street, can they turn left at that point and head north if they want to?
Yes,
Okay, so it's the same.
absolutely.
It's the same.
Mhm. That's what I'm saying is we're reconfiguring and we're asking for singular use of some of those spaces, but it's not changing anything of that parking lot as its approvals.
Okay.
From entrancing, exiting, or use. We're just saying we want to segregate our residents into a gated area, but leaving those 15 along Manatee Avenue. The other thing Carl had asked us, when we're doing this, we're going to spend in excess of $250,000 in redoing this parking lot, which includes making it look nice along Manatee Avenue. It includes all the construction updates for remilling and repaving and restriping and landscape lighting. We're going to create a much better situation there for those 15 spaces for the public, plus we're going to create our own spaces to the rear. So,
And if you drive in that right now, it needs it.
oh, it's basically asphalt with bumper blocks. And
a lot of potholes.
Yeah, and again, we're going to create a much nicer avenue as you're coming in Manatee Avenue, even if you're not going into the parking space.
Shame on
for
us,
that.
we own it.
Exactly.
So that's the parking area that we're asking for in the development agreement. The last is, I want to just show you, this is the actual exhibit that exists with our agreement with Manatee County, which this is part of our development agreement, and it is included and been recorded in the county, that we have to meet. And what this is we have to meet the maximum we can charge is based upon median income, and we're at 120%, which qualifies for attainable workforce housing.
So what
Our
is that
sweet
number?
spot is 80 to 120%. That means that an individual can make 39.7 to 59.4 or 6, I think it is, in income to be eligible to live in this place. And that puts us, and again, from our focus groups, that puts us right in the sweet spot of that young professional, of that person that we're trying to bring downtown that's going to go spend those dollars on Main Street and those other kind of things. But I wanted to just pull this up and let you know this is actually the document that is attached to the development agreement with the county.
Yeah, it was not attached to my development. Can I have a copy of that? I did not have Exhibit D with the development agreement.
Yeah, that appeared to be an oversight, that Exhibit D to the Manatee County agreement got left out.
Yeah, and that's a good point I need to share, and I'll give you a copy, but I wanted to share with you. When the county, when we got our approvals for this and the county recorded the document, they did not record this attachment. We have subsequently asked the county, which they have done, and redid the agreement, re-recorded the agreement with it attached, which we sent to you, but it probably it was late in that transmission, so.
Quick question. So that's section of the agreement between the development and county, attainable housing under Section A. It refers to Exhibit D, which is not attached, but I'd like to have attached before any consideration is given to the agreement.
May I give that to?
And you know, but I don't like it I don't like how that's presented, but it also says that these are the rates that you can charge, and 20% above that.
Well, no, these are the maximum rates that you could ever charge on the project based on the attainable housing. So if you go to the 80 to 120%, a one-bedroom can be anywhere from $1,063 to $1,597.
Yeah, but I'm reading the agreement, and it says, definitions, workforce housing for a family of 3, and where the sale or rental price of the dwelling is no higher than 20% above the moderate income sales or rental prices established by the Resolution R18059 Florida
Right, and
statutes, and it refers to Exhibit D. So the way I read that you can charge 20% above this rate.
No. What that says, this agreement or this document says that the 20% is included. That's what makes it 120%. If you use the baseline of 100%, you can go up to 120%. That's what the actual agreement is, and that's what this.
So it is 20%
document.
higher then, if you're up to 120%.
It's up to 120% of median income.
Okay,
Correct.
so it is 20% higher then, okay.
That's correct.
Okay, that's back to where, okay. So it can be 20% higher than this with a,
20%
No.
higher than the schedule.
It can't be
is the
20.
schedule.
What you
it can
see-
never be higher than this schedule. Well, it
Right.
doesn't say that here, but.
Well, what you see, which I just gave you, if you'll look at what's highlighted in yellow, that is what has been approved. That's as high as you could go. It's 120% of median income.
So what is that on these are 1 and 2 bedrooms?
If you look to the
What
right,
is it, what is the expected cap on a 1 and 2 bedroom?
Well-
Not the start, but the cap. What would be the maximum you could charge for a 1 or 2 bedroom?
$14.91, which is on that sheet.
$14.91 for a 1 bedroom?
Yes.
And how much for a 2 bedroom?
Two-bedroom would be $15.97.
$15.97. And that meets the definition of attainable housing?
Absolutely. Because, again, you're buying this agreement today, but you're committing to this agreement to many years in the future. And this is sort of gives you the opportunity. We anticipate that our rents for one bedrooms will be about 1,100, and our two bedrooms about 1,300, 1,250 to 1,300. That's what we're coming out of the blocks with. What this is based on today's records, but committing the project to long-term workforce housing. So
Yeah.
there has to be some leeway in there because.
I understand you can say it's 1,100, but the reality is it's 1,491 to 1,597 with a 3% annual increase.
That's correct.
That's the maximum it could be. right out of the
Maximum
box. Ever.
Well,
Oh,
thank God it would only be 3% because the cost of living has only been around
again,
1 or 2, at least my social
these
security
are
check says that.
definitions that are provided, supplied by HUD, are provided and supplied by the county housing agencies. This is what the county determines, the HUD determines is workforce attainable housing.
Mr. Allen, I do have a question on that. If that's the maximum you can go, and you start out at that maximum and they're not renting, what are you going to do?
Well, we'd have to lower them.
Right, so I mean, again, it's going to be attainable workforce housing, but it's also going to be, the development is not going to sit there empty if they're not renting.
Absolutely.
So I would feel that as a businessman, you would be smart enough to know that you're going to come out of the box thinking what you're going to get them all rented, and then, you know.
A piece of the pie is better than having the pie go away.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mrs. Barnaby.
No, I was just saying, it's going to be market-driven, as any business person knows. And again, these are what we are given to go by, that the county has approved. It's from the state of Florida as well. While when you look at it and you go, wow, if I'm a single person, is this something that I could afford? I think it depends on what you're doing as a single person,
Right.
what your occupation is. If you're a teacher, if you were a firefighter, that sort of thing. This is obviously not going to be, by definition that we're seeing here, this is not low income. This is what is considered workforce or attainable. And those are two different things.
And I think that's a great point, and that's why we use the word attainable, affordable, as opposed to low income or subsidized. We do a number and we manage a number of low income and subsidized housing that have different criteria. So there's different levels of the market. What we're trying to bring to the community here is the ability for our young people, and again, I'm not trying to take out the elder population that might want to be in here, but our whole purpose of looking at this is to bring those young professionals and those young people that are working downtown in the surrounding area that want that urban living style, also may be able to walk to work with no car. Those are the things that we as a community don't have right now. They couldn't afford to move into the apartments on the river as a one bedroom. This is a better alternative for them, and that's what we were really proposing or we're pushing as we think is necessary.
Mr. Roth?
Yeah, so for starters, I like the project. This is just exactly what we need is downtown living space, I like what it's zeroed for. When I ask these questions, it's just for my clarification, so
Sure.
I know what I'm approving. So, at 1,100, that's 26,000 a year. Is that utilities included? Or do they have
It's a
that?
combination. Some utilities are included, usually electric is not.
Okay, so they're gonna have extra on that. So we're kind of weeding out, and then the target income is 39.7 to 59.4. Can people move in with more than 59.4?
No.
Okay, so, because even at 39.7, if you're making 39.7 and you're spending 26,000 a year plus utilities, you're cutting it awful close.
Yeah,
You're gonna eat bread sandwiches.
Without a doubt, and that's a problem that, again, that's where we get into, why don't we see 10 of these projects happening? Because there is a fine line to what works and what doesn't work.
Right.
At 39,000, they're probably right in that range of whether they're
can afford.
they can afford attainable housing, or they're more into maybe a subsidized situation. Again, it's hard for us to say, I can't solve that problem.
Right.
All we can do is try to solve the problem for the majority or the mass of those people that are in that range that don't have an option right now.
Right, well, and my only point for saying this is because after we make a decision, people are gonna come up with these conclusions and criticize us. It's like, I'm well aware of the fact that, you know, at 26,000, if you're making 39.7, you're cutting it really close. It's gonna be iffy whether you can actually afford it. This is
You're going to be
quality.
going to mom and dad's for lunch a lot or dinner a lot.
And the other thing you have, which you have to take into account, is you still have the married couple
Yeah.
that moves into a one-bedroom. Now you may end up having two 39s,
Yeah.
thousands. Now, the numbers, because they can sign individually,
Right.
now they can be in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no.
So that sort of opens that opportunity up.
It does, and that's all. So yeah, and this is gonna be high-quality living at the best price we can offer downtown. And then the other point I would make is with these, you know, look, and these are what the rents are right now. I know apartments in my neighborhood and homes in my neighborhood, they're going for this and more. So this is just what rents are in this town. This is not a cheap rent town. The other thing I'd point out is at that razor's edge, hopefully, because the whole goal in the long run for many, for downtowns and for, putting less carbon in the air would be having people not have cars, So this is almost encouraging that. If you want to live down there and you're really close, you don't need a car. You might not be able to afford a car. If you need to catch a bus down to the Publix and back, that's really easy, so.
Or you have your groceries delivered now. That's a
Absolutely.
huge.
Well, and the
industry
other thing
right
too
now.
is you may not remove the car from the person, but you remove the travel time that they are in their car. Again, we're a society that everybody wants to have a car and everybody wants to drive to in front of wherever they're going. But again, if you have a car, it's because you want to go to Publix or you want to be able to go somewhere on a given day. But if they're working downtown, they may not have to drive 5 days a week. And so while the car still may be there, which is why we need the parking spot, the travel may not be as much as you're describing.
Yeah, no, and the demographics that we know from the younger generation is they're not as reliant on cars. Maybe not catching up in this town, but this is the wave of the future. I know my daughter and family, nieces and nephews up in New York City, they don't own cars.
Right.
They haven't owned cars.
They go to Home Depot in a taxi or
Yeah.
an Uber when they need to, and, I hear you. I mean, I understand that. yeah.
Mr. Callahan?
I just wanted one point to also be noted that, this is workforce attainable housing at this location. Just remember, probably 3 months ago, you supported 2 tax credit applications for affordable housing, one probably 4 blocks from here, and one further down on 9th. So the council is looking at all aspects of housing. You have high-end rentals, which you've done a lot of. We have the affordable housing between the Addison Love Apartments and 2 applications that are actually into Florida Housing Finance, and then this type product. So you're looking at the whole gamut of things. And then one thing that I asked Mr. Allen if he could explain to the council too, I think it's important in looking at this apartment complex. You are primarily known as a builder of apartment complexes. Can you tell the council how many units through the NDC Realty you actually manage?
Yeah, part of we have a number of entities that we do business in, and one of our entities is NDC Asset Management, and we manage about 7,000 units of apartments in 5 different states, and including a lot in Florida, and within that 7,000 are a number of market rate, we'll call tax credit, we'll call HUD Section 8. We carry the gamut We have a staff of about 16 compliance officers, that's all they do is what you're describing is how do you verify incomes and do those kind of things. We have staff that trains our on-site staff and is responsible for all the HUD filings. We purchased that company from the corporate company at National Development Corporation, which in its time had 13,000 units that they both owned and managed. So we have about 42 years of experience in this type of housing. Attainable housing is somewhat of a newer factor. You either market or you are tax credit, low income. And attainable is something that, again, because the market has asked for that product to exist, this product now is coming to light. So that's why you haven't had 20 of these attainable housing projects come before you, because it really got lumped into one versus the other.
And I think something that's going to be important that we look at as a downtown and an area that the demographics as we change downtown, hopefully, will be more people downtown, which will actually, you won't have to get in your car and go to a grocery store. You won't have to call and have it delivered. You'll be able to either walk or bike to the grocery store, because the grocery store will want to be somewhere where the demographics fit it. So, but I think that's something that we're growing, so.
As you know, grocery stores are the number one. Some people will go and be the pioneer. Grocery stores don't. They count heads and beds.
Right.
And when it gets to a certain level, then it's viable for a grocery store. So as we continue to add people, we always have this opportunity in the future of maybe, being able to, I see you worked on one over in with 13th Avenue site that I
All
think
about heads and beds.
is wonderful. And again, once you get the grocery store, I guess as a community or an area, I don't want to say you've made it, but you sort of made it if you get a grocery store, because that tells you you've accomplished your housing task. So,
All right, any other questions?
I have several questions.
All right, Mr. Sanders?
I want to go through the agreement a little bit. On the first page, Section A, it refers to Exhibit C, and Exhibit C is blank. I have no Exhibit C, but it says with certain allowable inducements as permitted under the code. What are you talking about?
well, there's two things we're basically asking for, and they're defined in Section 4 on the second page. A describes the facility. B describes the density to allow us to do 130 units.
Right.
C, there's form-based code, which, again, you have the ability to alter, change, direct as you see it. One of the requirements in form-based code is when you get above eighth floors, you have a step back of the building. Let me explain to you why that's a problem here. One is we think the massing is unique downtown with that corner, and so we think with our visual that we're doing, we are accomplishing the same thing with different roof lines. Where it really creates the problem is when you step back, I've now created a completely different structural part of the building. As you can probably know, if you're building walls straight up and then doing things to make it look better, but when you drop back, now you're taking that structure up, having to move it in and then upward, which creates a fairly sizable increase in the cost. And again, these are things that are easily solvable by the council that allow the attainable housing to stay attainable. And that's unfortunately, in the past, one of the things that's occurred and I'm not saying the city of Bradenton, but in most governmental entities, is everybody's for affordable housing, attainable housing. But then you start putting criteria on it that basically takes the cost out of being attainable. And in this instance, that's one of the things that we're going to be looking for to try to keep those costs down, because I can build a much simpler structure if I can go straight up than tearing back.
I understand. There's nothing else then in that clause that you're referring to that you're asking the city for?
No.
Other than,
That's it.
other than what you just spoke of, which actually should be probably say under 4, section A, B, C, and D, unless you're just going to copy and paste that to the Exhibit C.
That's correct. The only other thing would be, I don't know, because I'm not a planner, I don't know whether code has to give that exception because we're parking a block away versus parking on site. I don't know if that's, but that would be an anticipated, but that's the only other thing that would be included in that.
The next page, it says total resident units not to exceed 130 residential units with 5,000 square feet of office and retail. Did I hear you say that you're eliminating office, or eliminating the office now because of parking and only retail?
Well, I'll be honest with you, because of the way your site plan works, we're calling it retail office so that we have that designation. But this location is definitely a retail location. So the answer is, I don't know that you would exclude office ever, but having real
I
estate.
understand, yeah, you want the option. What about if that becomes difficult to market and you want to convert that into more housing?
We would come back to you and ask for a change in that status.
So there's nothing in this agreement anywhere that says that you can convert that without
No.
coming back to the council?
That's correct.
Okay. Impact fees,
Yes.
all except school. And it says, if an exemption for the project from the school impact fees becomes effective prior to issuance of the certificate of occupancy for the project, the developer should have the right to claim the exemption. But the exemption comes from the school, not from the city.
That's correct.
We're not going to supplement impact fees from the school.
Right, but the impact fees are set when you pull your permit.
Right.
There are a number of communities, municipalities and governments that are having conversations with school boards all over the state.
Which they
saying
should.
for this type of product, there's chances there are gonna be very few children in the facility. So can you allow us to exempt those type of projects from your school board? If that agreement ever got struck between the city of Bradenton and the school board prior to our CO,
Right.
we would like to take advantage of that.
Right,
So
and-
but it does not, it has nothing to do with you taking any assumption that you're waiving that.
Right.
That just gives us the option
Thank
if
you.
you come to an agreement.
Thank you, I wanted to hear that. And I'm on Bradenton Housing, and we sent a letter to the school board to exempt these properties, so I'm in support of exempting that tax if the school was willing to do it.
Okay.
So
And that's
we
all.
already sent a letter from here, Mr. Callahan wrote it, so I would say that this would fall in that project. So I would be inclined to offer that incentive
Yeah.
as support.
And we appreciate it. If you do support it, get that done before we get our CO.
Well,
No, I'm just kidding.
yeah, it's-
But no, we appreciate that very much because those dollars are so important as we're trying to keep the cost down, which keeps the rents down, which
Right.
allows it to be attained. So we thank you for that.
Right.
I think there is movement going on that right now, so.
That's good, as long as everybody can support that, I think it's good, because we have to, well, I can go on for a long, but I'll carry on. Impact fees, this building will probably be in the range of $15-20 million,
Higher,
higher?
yes.
So impact fees would be, how much do you think?
Well, we estimate about 800,000,
800,000?
of which 400 or 450 is school. So somewhere in the 300 to 350 range for impact fees. Is that, Jason, would that be correct? Yeah, that's a correct.
Would probably be a little more than that, wouldn't it?
Again, I didn't do the actual because the city sort of gives us the final, but what we estimated, other than school boards, about 350.
So if that's the number, 400,000, then soon you're asking forgiveness of the 400,000?
That's correct.
Okay. I'm just wanting to know the numbers. I'm not a proponent or opponent of either one.
No, you just want the
I
information.
just want the information so everybody understands what we're doing, because sometimes we do these things and we say, well, I thought it was this. No, I'm gonna make it very clear. This is what we have to spend or to do this. It's a great project. Don't get me wrong. I'm gonna start up with saying that. It's a great project. I support it. But there is a cost to the city, and we need to just recognize it. And if we accept it, fine. If we don't, at least we were told.
Appreciate it.
That's all I'm trying to do.
Sure.
And not trying to be, yeah. All right, the parking lot, this one, the ones that kind of got me. The parking lot by the post office, there's 60 units there you're asking for. You're gonna pay $10 a year plus 10,000 for 7 years?
No, the way this agreement is, we are asking for the northern portion of the parking lot, which we estimate we can put 92 spaces. 92 spaces.
92 spaces?
Within our purview for our tenants, allowing 15 spaces for public parking on the southern end for the post office. We are proposing a $10,000 a year from CO for 7 years.
7 years?
Yeah, and the reason that is, and we didn't talk about it because this is really, the only other thing we're asking for is a TIF arrangement, which is really the CRA approving for 7 years. And so the intent was to pay the $10,000 a year in rent for the parking lot. Once that 7 years is up, you're gaining all of the TIF money back at that point that you've abated, because you'll start getting that on a regular basis. And so that the rental rate would drop back to $10 a year at that point in year 8.
All right, that's the problem I'm having mostly with this. You're asking for 51 more years of $10 a year. That's taking us way out into the future, that we're making a commitment here, I am and the other board members, for something way out in the future and it ties up the land. I want to address that, and maybe have other members to address that, how we're going to tie up this land. And it calls for a renewal of 10 years on top of that, does it not?
That's correct.
Which would almost be 100 years. We're tying up this property. And I know what's going to be said by Mr. Callahan, that we have an option to get out of it. It says mutually. And mutually to me means both parties have to agree, and I don't know why you'd agree to give up a 100-year lease at $10 a year. I wouldn't. So I have an issue with that needs to be discussed with the council, and I'd like to hear more from the other 4 members.
Anyone have any comments on that?
I think Mr. Callahan needs to address it so that everyone hears the same thing at the
Any
same
other
time.
council members? Mr. Callahan?
Like Mr. Allen had indicated before, there was a certain looking at this as opposed to an outright gift of parking, which is kind of what the initial scenario was. Can we have parking? And I said, no, from that perspective, you can't have parking. I don't think that's the case. You know, you can certainly use the lot, I think, for an extended period of time. I don't know the useful life of that building. Certainly it can go on as long as that building is there. If that building comes down, if you'd like to put that kind of exemption in there. The thing is, it's not that you're going to have that space for whatever you want to use it for in the future. When I structured this in the TIF agreement, it was based on the 7 years. So that I said right up front, no, I can't give it to you, or I don't think the city can give it to you for nothing. I think you need to pay some equivalent rents. If it's $10 per month per space, which is kind of what we're getting now, you need to pay that $10,000 in rental. With the TIF coming on, which is estimated probably to be over $200,000 in the future at that year 7, that would be a replacement potential of that revenue going in there to CRA. Other things, usually when our parking rental rates, what we do, we don't use it to make money. It goes into the parking fund. It doesn't go into the City of Bradenton general coffers. It is used for maintaining parking operations. We will no longer have to maintain that space over the long term. So that's one of the considerations. It's not a general fund revenue. Parking revenues are not general fund revenues. So in which case, we looked at a replacement long-term revenue source to be able to offset that $10,000. That's just the way we looked at it. It was not something that necessarily the developer wanted to do up front, that I pretty much insisted that that's what I think would be at a minimum fair, and that's why I
have a question. We're receiving $10 a month now from the post office?
No, our parking, right now it is put your coin in and pay almost nothing.
So we're keep bringing in $10,000 of revenue a year on that.
Oh, God, no.
Well, then how did you arrive at that?
No, I said they will give us $10,000.
No, but you said it was a replacement of,
The 200,000 is a potential revenues that come into the CRA is a replacement of funding. You could ask the CRA, I meant probably in the future, say, do you want to pay this to create parking for, into the parking fund? But the CRA will be receiving approximately $200,000 starting in after year 7.
yeah, but that's a different subject.
But it all ties in. When you look at these agreements are looked at in total. Never tried to indicate that these are anything other than incentives to help try to make this happen. That's what this is. This is an incentive to try to make workforce attainable housing where it may not happen anyplace else on a catalyst site that has been a premier site for the city to try to do this type of work on. So that's all. These are incentives.
Mr. Callahan, if you say $200,000 will come in 7 years with the TIF, if this building is there if this building is not there in 7 years, how much money's coming into the TIF for that?
Nothing.
Okay, so it is kind of one of those things that, like you said, we have to give a little incentive to go forward. And I think one of the questions Mr. Sanders, you can correct me if I'm wrong, you were asking about how did we figure $10,000? Well, you did it at $10 a space, I believe.
Close to $900 a month,
Right,
somewhere along
yeah.
the line would be
So
the
something
equivalent
about-
if we charge $10 a space.
Right, and Mr. Sanders,
Which
I
is what we do over at the Wilcox line. It's
Wilcox.
about $10 for a permit over there. That was where that consideration.
I think
understand.
some of the things that you're bringing up are very valid points from the standpoint of, why do we want to set something up for 100 years from now that we don't even know what's going to be happening? But we can also, when you look at some of this city and the history in my lifetime, is there's been things with the sand pile that sat for many, 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 many years, bringing zero into the town, and they made some decisions to go forward, and it brings opportunity. So, I agree with you on the standpoint of setting things up, but we also do have to ask these questions and get them answered and to move forward. But there is some things we have to do as a community that take a little leap of faith to get more stuff in there and more people.
Mayor.
Yes, ma'am. Ms. Barnaby?
Mr. Callahan, there was one part that we did not get to. As I understand it, and please say it the correct way if I don't, should we have someone want to do a major development on this parking lot area in the future, there is a mechanism in which we can try to move forward with that. Can you explain that?
Just let me ask Mr. Allen one question. Mr. Allen, in that last paragraph, are you fine if we add in that approval by either side will not be unreasonably withheld?
Absolutely.
So if that, rather than saying it's an absolute, neither side can absolutely say it, when you put that will not be unreasonably withheld, then you have the opportunity to probably take that to a mediator, say, is this reasonable? Is the person reasonable who's deciding this?
Okay, will you speak to that? What?
So what we looked at is, because it was such a long-term deal, I didn't want to be in a position where the city would not have opportunities on that site. It is a very visible site. It's been a very visible site for 50 years and nobody's wanted to do anything with it. But I'm thinking more in terms of the long-term future when the post office may not be there. When the little building on the corner is great, but the distribution center may not be there. There may be no need for our additional parking on the back. That becomes a fantastic site for a large development at some point in time in the future. And I didn't want to be hamstrung that there was no opportunities to do that because we had it tied up in a parking lot lease. I'm trying to do that every place where we have a parking lot, saying we don't tie it up indefinitely. It is tied up until such time as there may be a need, there may be a use, and we have the option then of figuring that out.
So I have a question. Why then 51 years with a 10-year renewable if it's not important?
No, it's important.
That's almost 100 years you're asking us to commit to with a clause in there that says mutually agreed and now unreasonably, which those words don't matter.
They do matter legally when you say
Well,
will not be
I don't know.
unreasonably withheld, because that's in almost all contracts, that
Right.
will not be unreasonably
It's-
withheld. It can't be arbitrary and capricious from either side. They can't come in and just say, because I like it, put my foot down and say, you're precluded from that. That's what it says.
So let me ask Mr. Allen, if that, would you agree to take those out?
No, and
No?
and the simple reason is, one of the things, as you know, this project is north of probably 28 or 29 million. We do not carry that kind of cash in our pockets. We're going to have to get this financed, and so the simple truth to the lease term for that parking area is to give the lender comfort that that building has lease. And that's why when you talk about all these numbers, what's typical is you would either sell us the property or you would do a 99-year lease. And lenders look at 99-year leases like you sold it to them.
Have we appraised the property, know the value?
No, I don't.
Shouldn't we know that?
I'm not sure.
I don't think there has been any intent previously to do anything other than parking on it.
Yeah. I would have no other authority other than to park cars on that, so the value of the property from our standpoint would be not realistic or not necessary in our case.
And that's where the value comes in the future, that if somebody wants to do it, they want to buy it for that purpose, then that's when you would do an appraisal. If somebody else is wanting to develop it, then you could have an appraisal done.
And if I could add to this, being a developer, if you put me in a scenario forward 20 years and the post office goes away, let's just say it goes away, and that site becomes very valuable, I, as a developer, part of my thing coming in to develop that piece is I'm probably going to have an obligation with the city to go solve your parking issue that you have with us. I mean, it doesn't fall just on the city that, oh, the city has to solve this or it doesn't happen. If there's a user that's going to develop that piece, that's just something the developer is going to have to work with the city to solve if they want to do their project. That's the realistic look at development.
I understand, try selling that to your lender.
Well, and again, and I
I used to be the lender and I wouldn't buy that.
Well, and see, and I could not sell this project, or I could not get this project mortgaged without this kind of approval for the parking.
Mr. Roth?
Okay, thanks. Well, when it started off, Mr. Sanders made a statement. He said he wanted to know what other people think. So I've been making some notes of what I think. First off, although we're in here in a city council meeting talking about a parking lot, this is next going to have to go to the CRA for the TIF. So I'm going to put my other hat on right now. For
Mr. Roth,
yes.
maybe you'd want to save those comments for the CRA meeting, just to
Well,
kind of
It
keep the council stuff here.
it actually is pertinent.
Okay, all right. Well,
As long as we're not
Well,
voting on it,
no,
I think
I'm
it's
not-
okay to make a
Let's
difference.
make
I'm not-
certain
I'm
that
not-
our attorney says that this is not an issue, please.
No, I don't have a problem with him making comments.
Making a comment, all right, thank you. Just want to make sure so we don't tie
Okay.
anything up.
Okay. So just, and I'm just analyzing, So first thing, my training with CRAs was, that these type of projects are very difficult. And the first reason is the price of dirt, the cost of the land. So we have this where we have a small project, we have a big deal going on a small project, so the rest of it is parking. And then one of the first criteria for, whether a CRA project is legitimate or not is slum and blight. Well, I think that corner could be considered blighted right now. So we're moving there. We're going to affordable housing. Definitely something that is recommended use.
Attainable housing.
Yeah.
Well, obtainable housing, workforce housing. As far as the corner that has the post office on it, I've been here, living downtown since 1988. It's always been It's a great old building. I'd say it's considered a historic building. I'd say removing that building is gonna be, for someday, if anyone wants to remove that building, there's gonna be one heck of a food fight going on, So it may, now it may change where the distribution center may change. That type of stuff goes on all the time. But that building will probably be there 100 years from now, just because removing it will be politically unacceptable. And there should be a post office downtown. And there'll always be a little bit of foot traffic. So I think trying to figure out what's gonna happen 100 years from now with that corner, there'll probably be a historic post office there. The $10,000 rent right now is gonna flip-flop. There's gonna be a 7-year TIF, which, by the way, is a short-term TIF. I know from my negotiations coming into this, I said, well, if we're gonna do a parking lot swap, then I want a short-term TIF. I don't want a 15, 20-year TIF. I want to make it equitable for the city.
And you made that quite clear to me.
So which is fair, is it not?
Very much so.
Okay, so then we change it down to, the small amount. I mean, it can't be nothing. Real estate says it's got to be for $1 or some form of equity. So we went to 10, but we're going to be replacing it with the return of the TIF, which is $200,000. Well, that's a net gain. So I'm not uncomfortable with where we're heading right now, considering all the factors. That's going into this. I think it's, we need some, eventually, for downtown to become what we want it to be, we need 5 of these. This 100 units isn't gonna do it. We might need 10 of these, You're gonna get you want a downtown supermarket, you're gonna need 20 of these. It's gonna have to be the demographics of the people. The supermarkets aren't gonna do what they wanna do until they know that they've got a customer base. So I think we're heading in, I'm quite comfortable with the direction we're heading. I'm trying to eliminate anything that looks, out of the ordinary or that someone might question in the future. I'm considering all the aspects. Let's just call it cut to the middle, a $25 million improvement on a blighted corner for housing. It's like, this is textbook CRA material. The one question I did have that was off topic of where I'm at right now was, you said there's going to be gas on the top for the grills and everything. Are you going to have gas in the are the ranges, in the apartments? They're going to have gas?
We have not determined that yet. We're trying to get our approvals and then engage our MEP professionals to do their thing.
Yeah.
So the answer is I don't know that answer today.
That's nice.
We will look at it, and it'll be what is the best, most efficient cost for putting it in, and what is the best in the long-term rates for tenants.
Right.
For the cost of the service. So that has not been determined yet.
Well, gas, everyone loves gas. Gas is cheaper, but, a gas range is more expensive than an electric range. And the one thing I did notice is you're tapping into the chiller plant, which is a plus.
Yeah, for the retail only.
Okay.
Mr. Roth, appreciate the comments. One thing, we need 10 of housing downtown, maybe not 10 of these exactly, though.
Oh, no.
10 condos and different things. So I agree with you. I'd like 10 because I want a grocery store downtown as soon as possible. So, Mrs. Coker?
Well, you were just asking for what everybody was thinking, and as a realtor, I'm very keenly appreciate the pressures on the rental markets right now, and it's being exacerbated with all of the seasonal rentals, and I see this as a very stabilizing to help counteract some of that. So I'm very glad to see a project like this happen, and I especially like it that I feel like it's on a catalytic site that we've identified that needs to be a priority for us, and it's right at our gateway. It'll be, to me, this is just going to be so much better to look at than what we've been looking at for so long. And because of that, I feel like the incentives are very appropriate. And so I'm in favor of that. And we also have the bonus of that unsightly parking lot that, like you said, it's embarrassing that we don't maintain that better. So we get the bonus of that. So I think I'm seeing a lot of stuff I like.
Okay.
Anyone else?
I have more.
Ms. Coachman?
My only concern is, I know this is workforce housing, and teachers are among the careers that would be included in that. And I'm thinking of the young teachers that I've worked with. It's still going to be pretty tight for them. And then they won't be in walking distance or bike distance to their jobs. So that's just the only concern, but that's minor compared to all the good things that.
And I do appreciate that. We do, you know, our family and our organization has taken education very seriously in our community, and we want to try to help there. And again, that's why we're asking for some of these things, to try to drive that number down in a rental rate as far as we can, which may maximize the ability to add additional people that may be on the fringe. And that's important to us, so.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Okay, that reminds me of another question. The attainable housing rate, is that forever, or is that sunshined any time?
I believe,
Are you familiar with
how long the attainable housing designation is in existence? At least 12 years.
Is that in writing someplace?
Yeah, that's in the county's development document that's recorded.
And
with
that's
the-
what was attached? I didn't see that.
It's in there, you got that.
Yeah.
The county's development agreement.
Okay, you can point it out to me later, but so there's only guaranteed to 12 years.
12 years.
And then it can go to market rate.
That's correct.
Okay.
If other factors don't allow us to do that.
I understand. So 7 of those 12 years, you're asking for forgiveness of TIF money. So basically, we are buying the attainable housing through the TIF rebate for about 80% of the project.
Which is allowing those rents to be lowered.
They're allowing those rents to be lowered. I just want
Right.
this to be,
Absolutely.
Everybody understand what this is, that we're basically taking city funds, taxpayer funds, and supplementing to lower it, which I'm not sure that's low enough, because $1,600 a month to me is still quite high. But somebody's made that determination at HUD, but I don't know anybody that trusts HUD.
But Mr. Sanders, it's also bringing a project that we wouldn't have if
I
we
understand.
didn't give that. So there is some.
I understand.
Some cost and benefit to it, so I mean, I think we see the point you're going.
Hey,
I
if it was
appreciate
just the
but-
project itself, I'd say, yeah, absolutely. But I just want to know what it costs. There is a cost, and if everybody's on board with it, that's fine.
Sure.
So, you want 60 parking spaces in our garage. It says residential parking rates, and I don't know what that is, and it's been talked about for months and months, and I think we need to know that now, not
I don't
later.
think you can know that now, because.
Why not?
The residential rate is a rate that would be charged for every resident who would qualify for that downtown. That's only a proposal. Sarasota does it, it seems to work well. We don't charge for anything in the garage right now.
I know.
So, and when this is built, and within 2 years, I am sure you will have that rate established. But what it wants to do is, it does not differentiate these people from any other resident downtown. It says you will pay the same rate as every other resident. If every other resident pays $20 a month, they'll pay $20 a month. If you establish at the council a residential rate to be $100 a month, they will pay $100 a month. There is no differential between, there's no special deal for this development over.
We don't know what the deal is.
We are going to make that deal.
You're gonna
as
make
this
that
council.
deal.
But we've been saying that for 2 years.
I've only been here a week, so give me some.
No,
time
you was
to run
here.
stuff around.
No. You're not gonna skate on that one.
And
No.
I've only, well, I was gone for 6 months.
You had a moratorium for 6 months, okay.
Right, so, my comment to that is, though, there's a lot of things I want to bring up, and that's one of them, as your president or executive of this council, and it will be coming soon, but we couldn't bring it at this meeting.
Well, it needs to be discussed before it's a blank
lot of
item in
things
an
we're gonna-
agreement.
I think from the project's perspective.
And that's not your fault, because I've talked to you about that, and you said,
well,
Mr. Callahan has to, well,
Yeah,
the
and
city
I-
has to do that. But we've sat here 2 years now without renting that garage, and we spent taxpayer money, $15 million. Does everybody understand that? $15 million out of our coffers to build that garage. Beautiful garage, probably the best one in the country. But it's not rented. And I've got complaints. Just last night, first floor is taken up by the hotel forever. 100 spaces, one floor gone, completely gone.
And that's an incorrect statement. The city gave 100 spaces somewhere in the city, and right now we're using the garage. If we want to make another, later on, we can give them somewhere else, but it has to be within in that area. So we have options. We set up options with that. And the
Right.
important thing is,
That's a whole different,
Right, yeah.
that's a whole different.
Bring it
that's
back-
not this part of
to
it.
bring
That's
it
not-
back to
That
this
doesn't
pro-
affect this. I'm just making a comment,
Right.
that commitment's there.
But to bring it back to this project, as we're talking about incentives and appropriate or not, the only incentive we're asking for connected to this development agreement is that you offer us at least 60 spaces, or offer us 60 spaces at whatever your residential rate you determine as a group. So that's the only incentive we're asking for, is that we have the opportunity to have 60 spaces, but we're gonna pay for them. So you just gotta tell us what that is. That's all.
I understand that. But those spaces cost us probably $25,000 apiece. So they're very expensive spaces. And if our intentions was to build a $15 million garage to supplement a hotel and attainable housing, then so be it. I don't know if that discussion ever happened, but that's the path we're headed down. So I just want to make the public aware that is what we're doing, and it has to be accepted, because I don't want to hear comments a year from now, well, you did this and you didn't tell us. No, I told you. Show up and voice your concerns, because I had people that's calling me last night that said, I can't go in the garage, and the first floor is basically taken by the hotel, and we got city employees in there, we got squad cars in there, and it's just like, well, who'd you build this for? Did you build it for the public, or did you build it for special interest? And so I can't answer that question.
Well,
Hold on, I'll ask Mr. Roth, you have something you want to say?
Yeah, just on this, because this was debated. I mean, back on this project, I support this, and now we're talking about the parking garage. So I just clarify some issues on that.
Well, the parking garage, Mr. Roth, is in this agreement.
I know it is. So
That's not a separate issue.
I'm going to
It's in
deal
this agreement.
I'm going to deal with that. So I cautioned everyone at the very beginning that the research that I've done on putting retail in parking garages, city municipal parking garages, is a risky business. That they traditionally, the retail component doesn't do well. There was a large push by some members of the council that wanted retail down third, and it was going to cost us 60 spaces easily. So, and I was like, no, I mean, we'll have a hard time taking the ones that we got, which we're obviously in that now. We're in that range. I think we will get them filled up, but it's going to be an effort. But my efforts was to not put more retail down on third, because it was going to cost us 60 spaces easily. I think I heard at one point 100. And we didn't do that. So we did plan for that. And the whole idea of the parking garage was not just, it was to accommodate something that needed to happen downtown, which was hotels. We got 2 hotels downtown. We used to have 0. You know, a downtown without a hotel is never going anywhere. Now we're trying to figure out how to get residential housing, permanent housing. This is exactly all the courses, and I've taken a lot of courses in new urbanism and development and what you need houses, you need heads and beds. If you don't get that downtown, you're never going to go anywhere. You're just going to have offices and nothing but. So we're moving in that direction. But as far as that parking garage was, we put more in. We did spend a lot of money on it, and we put more in for the future. We planned ahead for the future, for something like this. And and you're not getting preferential treatment. If they go in there, if they've got a pass for a parking slot, and they go in there, and there aren't any, well, they're just out of luck. They're just like any Joe citizen that, you know. So we'll deal with that. We'll deal with that. And there was talk that if we succeed downtown, we're going to need another parking garage. I mean, that was said. This isn't going to solve all our problems forever. This is a fix for now. We gambled on the retail. The retail is going to be. We have to fill that retail. I'm probably the most. Every time I drive by that retail, it kind of ticks me off because I told you so. So, but I did resist putting in a whole nother line of retail that would have given us the 60 spaces that we're arguing about right now. So, hey, I saved you 60 spaces.
Well, congratulations.
Mr. Roth, you're the only council person that sits up here now that was on that vote. I'm making it funny because I was there
Okay,
too,
you
and I
was
agree
there.
with you going through, but my point with that is the parking garage has hundreds of spaces that aren't used daily right now.
Yeah.
And Mr. Callahan and I drove through, we drove the whole city the other day, and we drove through the parking garage, and I don't think there was any cars on the fourth floor, maybe that one vehicle. The third floor, there was nobody, and then second and first have police parking, city parking with residential parking. And it was discussed that, if we fill this up, it's a good problem to have. Where does our police vehicles need to be? Where does our city hall vehicles need to be? Well, if we're getting to that problem, none of them are even downtown. They're in another facility besides being down here. So it's a good situation to have. And Mr. Allen, I believe, has taken a leap of faith on this, because if we say it's $500 a space, you've already agreed on it, you got a building, you got to take it. So, right, you need the space. So, and hopefully, again, I've said this many times going the last several months a lot also, I believe that you're going to get a lot of these people that would maybe have 2 cars if they lived in a house. They may only have 1 car and it may park and sit. Absolutely. And that's what we hope, because again, then they are going downtown. Then Main Street turns into 13th and 12th, 11th from more retail and spaces to do things. So, which again benefits all of us. So it's very important to get these questions answered. There is a cost, but there also is a benefit to anything we do. Mr. Callahan?
Nothing else. It was just a case of looking at, you had previous agreements which were entered into, which were incentives to make things happen. That's what it's about. Because on its own, we had not attracted things downtown. We just hadn't. We hadn't been able to. The garage was built with approximately the 100 spaces taken out for downstairs. Was anticipated that we would use between 100 and 150 for our employee parking that used to be there, and which would have additional 250 spaces or more. And all that's predicated on us being here in this location forever. If we're not here, then that 100 to 150 goes away as well. Or if we find alternate spaces for our own people.
And also, going through that, Mr. Roth and I were here through the whole thing on it, is at one point we were talking about 300, maybe 400 spaces. And we upped that. So because we did hopefully plan for the future, where a lot of cities don't, and even though the retail component and maybe a condo component on top of that garage, saying that for Mr. Gallo out there listening, because that was discussed about. But, I was strong on the retail down third, which I will still say one day that is a possibility if it ever became needed. So, but we also didn't get in the middle of a pandemic a year ago. And, so there's a lot of issues that have popped up and I hear that every day about the retail there. And again, we are going to have to come to, as a council in a city, determine what that is, and that's on my list. So that's going to be coming up very soon at a workshop. So thank you for bringing that up too. It's making it easy.
Well, help me out here. So I think you just said that we have an empty parking garage that's not utilized that we spent $15 million on.
No, we set up a parking garage that is being utilized at a lower level right now that we can set up to succeed, because it wasn't a huge difference to add some spaces at that time, where if we would have wanted to add 100 spaces after it was built, it would have been cost prohibitive, and shame on planning for the future. And now this opportunity is coming up, and maybe these opportunities will come up a lot more because we have that parking garage. And that's what we're hoping. Again, we didn't get into in a worldwide pandemic a year ago and not have any consequences to our city right now. And that's where I think we're coming out of it. This is a perfect project, and I believe we can have this debate at any time in the future, but let's talk about this project going forward and get this voted up or down by this council.
The other thing with the parking garage, no one anticipated the pandemic when we opened up, that there would be not near the number of people downtown that there are. So you can say it's not utilized. It's not utilized because there aren't near the people down here now that were anticipated to be down here during that time. That's one of the reasons we held off with the parking system for pay. We wanted to see how it parked, and then the pandemic hit. We were scheduled to put that system in probably February of last year, maybe before, and we started seeing how it was parked and seeing the system that we anticipated probably wasn't going to work as well. So Sharon and I have talked about the need to revisit that, because we know that day is coming when you want to make sure you have the right mechanism in there for your charge per parking that works for permitting. Now we know what the uses are. Works for permitting, works for the accessory uses for both hotels. It's not just this hotel. The agreement with the River Park Hotel or the Hampton Inn is they get overflow parking in that garage as well. That's part of that agreement a long time ago, that they had spaces in our parking lot that they could use for overflow parking. So that is not a new arrangement on hotels. It is just a different hotel, the different arrangements that are out there, and the anticipated upbuild to make sure there was plenty of short-term foreseeable spaces. We also had the debate about, did we overbuild it? Because one particular council person believed that we may be closer to autonomous cars, and we may be closer to that realm, and that the need for parking garages may not be as great as was anticipated either. So, I mean, there was all kinds of debate on that, on both sides of that issue during the building of that garage, or in planning of that garage.
And Mr. Callahan, did we not say too that quite possibly someday we might be looking at another garage over at the lot, the attorney lot around the corner there? That I know that was discussed.
We had discussed the
long-term
plans that were there that showed the Wilcox lot as potentially being another
parking garage
facility
for future needs. So this is not new.
All right, thanks a lot. I thought we weren't going to talk about the garage anymore, so there went 15 minutes. I'm not going to talk about the garage anymore because I have an opinion. But can this contract be assigned?
The answer is yes.
Okay. Who negotiated this contract with you?
Mr. Callahan.
Mr. Callahan. Did any attorney be involved?
Well, the attorneys are involved, but not typically, unless there's a dispute or a misunderstanding of any document. The principals usually work out the details and the attorneys work on their own. There is attorney involved. But
Yes, there is attorney involved.
not directly.
Who's the attorney involved?
Becky Vos.
Okay.
And Bob Green is our attorney.
Becky Vos
who's worked through
is our
this.
conflict attorney.
Should we not have them present to ask questions? I would ask for it.
They had indicated that she had no concerns with the contract as it was presented.
Yeah, but that's not her call. That's my call.
She didn't write it, she just reviewed it.
Yeah, that's right. So I want to ask her questions. She should have been here today. So it says that with a copy to Scott Ridicell, Blaylock Walters. I'd like that explanation why, if there's a conflict attorney.
Because this is a document between the city of
City.
Bradenton and 920 Manatee Associates, and Scott Rudisell is your attorney. So that's.
And he
if that's a-
likewise is your attorney.
Pardon me?
And he likewise is your
No,
attorney.
I just.
The firm
mentioned-
is likewise
I
yours.
just mentioned to you that Bob Green is the attorney on this project for us, which has no.
You don't use
affiliation-
Blaylock Walters
which
as
has
your,
no- It has no affiliation with Blaylock Walters in this event.
Mr. Ridicell?
but you don't, you usually use Blaylock Walters as your primary.
That's not the question I answered. The answer is, we do use Blaylock Walters for legal work, but in this project, it's exclusively Bob Green.
Okay.
Mr. Ridicell, do you have any?
Yeah, I haven't had any involvement at all in this, and our firm hasn't had any involvement at all in the negotiation of this contract. I didn't even know until you said it that I was on the notice thing, but, you know, that's just for notices that I would be copied on if there was a notice provided to the city in the future.
I believe the attorney that reviewed this from your side is an outsourced attorney.
Yeah, Becky Rose is
So
counsel
from a,
through conflict attorney.
from a confirmation in a document, you would want your attorney to be notified, is what I think Mr. Rudis said.
Right.
This contract is between the City of Bradenton and Manatee, 920 Manatee Associates LLC. Who is 920 Manatee Associates LLC?
920 Manatee Associates is basically two groups. It's myself and National Development of America, which is my development partner in this.
National,
Development of America.
okay,
We've been developing properties. We both came out of National Development Corporation. He is a developer out of Fort Myers.
Fort Myers.
And we do a lot of business residentially with him, both in development, construction, and management. Rick Miller is the principal, and we've been doing business together for 35 years.
Good.
And we are the only two individual owners of this project.
So you do have the right to assign. It's not, there's no language in here that says that one way or the other. I would ask that that be put in here, and for us to have a full understanding before we approve this, that there is a rights of assignment over to a third party at any time, or if we want to restrict that. And I would ask this council not to vote on this today until some of these issues are resolved.
Well, I can answer that from our standpoint. I have no problem not assigning it without approval of both parties. I have no problem with that.
So we need to put language in here that says assignment would come back to council for approval.
You could approve it with that stipulation.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Wait a minute, we need to have that in writing.
No,
Scott, Mr. Rudisell, can that be added without?
Now he's giving advice on a contract that he hasn't negotiated.
Well, if this is a question about an individual situation in that contract, and he's our city attorney, so I'm asking as our city attorney, can
All right,
something like that be added? without
tread
a
carefully.
Right, I do have to tread carefully here, but the general question, I think, is, can the council approve a contract subject to a stipulation being added that everyone's in agreement as to the language? And I think the answer is yes.
Oh, yes.
In the agreement you had with the county, there's language which also, by the way, references Blaylock Walters as the attorney.
that is correct.
So they were, who was the attorney for the?
Will Robinson was the attorney
Will Robinson,
with the
Blaylock
county.
Walters for the county agreement, which is attached to this agreement, that's we're asking to comply with. So there's not clear arm's length separation from that.
I am in no way, shape, or form going to get into a discussion with you
I
about
understand that's a legal issue,
Um,
but the point being is that's who approved the land contract with the county.
That's correct.
All right. There's indemnification for the project in the county agreement, and why is it in same indemnification in the city agreement?
It's their property. It's their property, and they were selling you the property.
Yeah, when we did the development agreement and the sale purchase agreement, the county was still the owner of record of that piece of property.
Shouldn't we have an indemnification from the city, to the city for this project?
We don't own the property.
No.
But we're, okay.
When that language will appear in the lease when the lease is prepared for the parking area. But that's the only piece that would be.
Well, that's what I meant in the
Yeah,
parking
but
area.
that wouldn't show up in the agreement, that would show up in the lease of the property.
All right, so, again, great project. But here's the cost. We're gonna waive $400,000 in impact fees. we're basically giving up the parking lot because it's a 91-year lease. There's no money involved. I don't know the value of it. I don't think it's very clear cut, so that could be potentially $1 million. We're giving up 7 years of ad valorem tax, TIF tax, of $1.4 million. We're committing 60 spaces in the garage with no rates, so we're looking at a couple, $3 million. Would that be a fair assessment?
No.
Okay, what would it be?
When you talk about giving up or taking away, the parking lot does have a rental payment for 7 years. Then it does have TIF dollars coming back after 7 years if the CRA would approve that portion of the agreement. So I don't know that I would.
That's not the garage.
No.
Or that's not the parking lot.
That is the parking lot. That is the parking lot. What the reference is the total project, which that parking lot is necessary for that project to be constructed, will bring TIF dollars back to the community.
For the parking lot?
Well, for the overall project.
No, I'm talking about,
No,
yeah, but
but-
you're saying parking lot. The
No, the
parking lot
P-
will not bring any TIF dollars back.
Yeah, the piece you're missing, the piece you're completely missing is, without parking arrangement of some kind,
I
of which
understand.
this is it, this project does not go forward.
I understand that. That's what I agree with you.
So for you to try to separate the the parking lot and the building, I'm not sure that's a fair assessment because both have to occur for the project to be on the books for it to be able to get TIF funding.
I agree.
Okay, so I'm not sure I understand when you
Well,
say there's
I-
no value to
we
that.
We don't have an appraisal, so I threw the parking lot at, tying it up for 100 years is $1 million, and that's, and at 1.4 million, we're not gonna get for the first 7 years on the ad valorem tax.
Well, I don't know, I haven't run the math, but you'd have to discount the 99-year lease because it isn't a purchase. There is a remaining value that will end up at year 99. I don't know what that is. I'm really struggling debating you about this because we're not saying, and we didn't start our presentation saying that the city wasn't participating in this process. All we're saying is for attainable housing to occur in our community, there has to be a public-private partnership, and this is the part of the public-private partnership that we're asking for to be able to do this project.
Mr. Allen, I agree with you 100%. There has to be, or you won't build it. I agree. And we just have to know what the cost is.
Without a doubt, and we tried to be, and we started off higher. Carl did from the city's perspective, did a magnificent job. We badmouthed them a number of times. We started off with a 15-year TIF. Both Councilman Roth and Carl were very adamant that they wanted to drop that back, and so we agreed to a 7-year.
In lieu of the parking.
In lieu of the parking.
So you negotiated this with Councilman Roth?
No, we met with each council person individually to talk about it early on in the process as we were looking at buying the property from the county, and those were some of the things. Once we got into the discussion about what we should be doing or not be doing in our development agreement, I've had no communication with anybody other than Mr. Callahan.
I'm gonna move on, Mr. Sanders. Let's let the
didn't.
council people, and then let's get a motion, and then we can have some farther.
But I want to clarify,
Yes.
I actually met with you, and I met with each council person except Ms. Coachman, because she wasn't a council member at the time. And what I shared with you is exactly what I shared with the other council people. Nothing more, nothing less.
Well, but when you and I discussed it with Mr. Bartz, there was no 100-year agreement on the parking garage, or parking lot.
Well, we brought up that we needed the parking.
Yes,
Whether-
but there was no 100-year
Oh,
agreement.
no, and that's what I'm saying is,
Like,
none of the other
and I
council.
might add, that I've now had 3 of these documents in the
Mr.
last,
Sanders, I'm gonna let Mrs. Barnaby come up. and
well,
talk
you
now.
let me finish first.
No,
There's
I'm
3.
Mr. Sanders, I'm gonna let Mrs. Barnaby talk. You've taken up a lot of time. Let's hear what she has to say, then I'll come back to you. Thank you. Mrs. Barnaby?
I would just like to clarify, when Mr. Allen spoke with council members, no plans had been submitted. It was,
Conceptual.
how do you feel about getting attainable housing in our downtown? And you can't get into very specifics at that point, Mr. Sanders, because then you are conducting the city business outside of the public purview. You cannot speak specifically. You can speak about ideas, you can speak about a plan that might work, but you can't get into, we will pay this and you will pay that and we get this. That's what this meeting's about. And I think it's very clear that that distinction be made. That anytime anyone wants to do business with the city, they can come in and speak about concepts and opportunities to get to what the city wants to see, but you cannot get into specifics about costs. You can't get into what you're going to pay. You can't get into things like that, because then you are not conducting public business in the sunshine at that point.
And to further that, I think it's important to note that these were business discussions, just like we were having with each of the forums of young professionals. Nothing has been submitted to the city on this project whatsoever at this point. The only thing that has occurred is really a business opportunity that exists between the city of Bradenton and 920 Manatee Associates is what you have in front of you today in a development agreement. I agree with you 100%.
Mr. Roth?
And on that note, Ms. Barnaby, Councilman Barnaby just made, that when this was talked about, you met with everyone, it was just to, let's see if something could be done with a eyesore on a corner. That's all I knew. Absolutely. Was, how do we make the eyesore go away? And there was a discussion about a lot that, in my opinion, has never been utilized. I mean, it's the whole time I've lived here, that parking lot's been empty. I think that the revenue, there's cost about revenue of what do we make. I'm sure we lose money by the time we send a meter maid over there to check on that, and what we get out of the quarters, we lose money with that parking lot.
Quarters is triple the rate.
Absolutely. So, and then all I was saying was, conceptually, if the city were to, from my opinion, if the city were to say, okay, we have a piece of surplus property that could be utilized for good, but for the justification of the taxpayers, I would not be comfortable with a standard 15-year TIF. And that, my opinion, I think I threw it out there, I'd like to see more of a 5-year window, something really, really short window, not 7. But that's what, it was just a generalized concept of how do we get from the building that's there to here.
And that's a consistent comment that you've been making throughout other projects, that, we do pay attention to what you say when you're talking about things that aren't even ours. And, so that's just something that is consistent. But again, I didn't sit and talk with anybody once we started the development process or development agreement process, other than your designated representative, Mr. Callahan.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we want the public to understand is, and what you said just a few minutes ago, is public-private partnerships. And if you don't do something, you're never going to be able to grow a downtown in a way. And there is cost, but also there is benefit. So, and some of that's worked out in a debate format, and it's very important. But, when you can come up with a win-win, that's what you want to do. You just don't want to be getting gotcha moments that it's only cost to the city, because I wouldn't be for that. I know this council wouldn't be for that. Absolutely. But we've got to get the cost and the benefit out on both angles, not just cost only. So I think that at this point, we've had great debate, but I'd like to, at this point, are we at the point where we'd ask for a motion?
I'd like to have a little more comment. I think we
We
need to
can have
have,
it in discussion after we get a motion.
Okay.
I'm ready to make a motion.
so you don't want discussion?
We'll have discussion under the motion, so yes, sir. Mrs. Coker?
I would like to move that we approve the development agreement with 920 Manatee Associates LLC on the project site 920 Manatee Avenue West in Bradenton, with the stipulation that the contract may only be assigned with approval of council, and said approval shall not be unreasonably withheld.
Do Do we have a second for that?
I'll second that.
All right, Mr. Allen, just under discussion, further discussion, do you accept the stipulation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Scott, anything else we need to do for that stipulation? Okay, Mr. Sanders, further discussion?
I think we need to have this, we did not advertise this, I don't think properly, as a public meeting for the public to have input and comment, because we had nobody show. And I had calls last night about this, so I think that we need to move this to February to have open discussion for the public about how the expenditures of funds to have attainable housing. I'm for the project, but I want the public to understand and not have this the first agenda item of the new year with the new mayor and council.
Mr. Rudisell, is there anything that we've broken the law with what Mr. Sanders has said?
I don't think he was suggesting it was a legal requirement. I think he was saying that he wanted to.
We need to get you a new microphone.
Yeah, this is embarrassing.
Anything else? There's no legal part of it, just,
That-
okay.
That's all.
Mr. Sanders, do you have anything else?
I didn't hear an answer from.
What was the question? Question is there a legal
And we
requirement to
properly give
notice?
the public the right to stand and oppose or approve of this project with council. It doesn't seem that we've done that.
All right. Again, I have to be careful here, but the general law on approval of an agreement is there's no requirement for noticing. It's not a public hearing item. There's no notice requirement.
Even when we're expending taxpayer money? Making commitments to taxpayer money?
Yes, there's no.
Really?
I mean, nearly every decision this council makes is an expenditure of
Absolutely.
taxpayer money.
And the public has the right to be informed of that.
Absolutely.
Okay. I just don't think we have done that.
I understand.
Mrs. Beauchamp, did we properly notice this meeting?
It was on the agenda, yes, and the agenda has been properly noticed.
But we've amended we've revised it as of, I don't know when I got this, yesterday. We've had 3 documents. That's what I was trying to say before. We had 1 document, another document, a 3rd document I just got yesterday or the day before. I don't think that's proper notification, even to me as a councilman. I am expected to read the revised, and I don't think that's fair.
Are there any other questions by council members? Nothing? Okay. We have a motion and a second. I'd like to start, call for a vote. Ward 3,
Yes.
Ward 4,
Yes, with exceptions.
Ward 5,
Yes.
Ward 1,
Yes.
Ward 2.
Yes.
Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. All right, just real quick before we move on, I would like to recognize retired Councilman Gene Gallo, who's out here. It's his, I think, first meeting that he wasn't here, and he's here. So thank you for being here, Mr. Gallo, and we appreciate all you've done. Then also County Commissioner Van Ostenbridge is here in the audience with us, so thank you. All right, any unfinished business, Ms. Beauchamp or Mr. Callahan?
No, sir, not on the agenda.
Okay. Council reports, and I'm going to start in Ward 2, so our new council people can kind of listen a little bit to give a little bit of experience, how the council reports go.
Oh, you want them to see how not to do a council report? Is that what it is? I'm happy to serve as the,
Guinea pig.
well, and remember when you went to the doctor's office and you had highlights, and in highlights they had Goofus and Gallant. So I guess I'm Goofus today. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. One of the things that I wanted to just mention briefly to the council is I have been having conversations with several city staff members regarding what we may be able to do with the issues that we're having with our Airbnbs or VRBOs or whatever within the city limits. And I believe that those conversations have been fruitful, and I hope to have some information brought forward for us to discuss and possibly look at adopting some procedures and not necessarily regulations, I'm not sure the word I should use, but procedures that we may wish to apply to these operations within our city limits. There are other communities in Manatee County that do have certain limitations and regulations dealing with them. And I think it's important that we protect our neighborhoods and our citizens. If we choose not to do something, I think it's going to affect the fabric of our community and, dare I say, our tax base in the long run. So I just want to let you know that I have been having conversations about that, and will hopefully be bringing something forward at the next council meeting. Fun thing, the Manatee County Fair is in town. I would recommend, if you're going to the fair, please wear a mask. Even though you may be outside, there may be a significant number of people attending the events. What many people do not understand is the 4-H organization, which is a youth organization in our community. This is the steer sale and the swine sale are their two big fundraisers. So if we were not to have any type of activity with the Manatee County Fair, you would have children in the community that have purchased and raised livestock at a significant cost to them and their families. This is a way for them to recoup those costs. So if you want to go to the fair and you got a lot of freezer space and you want to buy a steer or a pig, I'm sure they would love to have you participate with that.
And Mary Ann, just on that point, I think we heard that they had the largest involvement that they've had with the children were able to, gave them a lot of time through this pandemic. So anything we can help them to do that would be great.
That would be wonderful. I would also like to issue my personal congratulations to Judge Thomas Gallen, who was selected as the Outstanding Citizen for Manatee County. I think that Judge Gallen over the years has provided a great deal of service to our community, and I think he's a very deserving winner. And then I would also like to give my condolences to the family of Dr. Joe Newhall, who was an amazing man in this community, an amazing family. If you saw the news story or the obituary, he left a thriving practice here in Manatee County to be a medical missionary in Burma with Dr. Seagraves. And Mrs. Newhall wrote a book about it, and it used to be in our library. I hope they have not culled it out, because it's an amazing story of what they did over there. And I will miss Dr. Newhall. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Roth?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Brown. I was glad to see that I read in the newspaper where you'd met with our local legislators about distribution of COVID, and you'd included that you believe the municipal workers should be bumped up, and I do agree. I always point out to people that we have about 560 people serving 56,000 people. That means each and every head has 1,000 people on their back. And if we stop operating, and I've had this conversation with legislators before, if the municipalities of the state of Florida stopped operating, the state would come to a screeching halt. So I do believe that they should be bumped up as vaccines are coming out. Just as the same thing that I believe that if we're going to expect teachers to go into classrooms with, 30 or 40 kids, they should be vaccinated. So I think that there's the state distribution system is askew, and I'm glad to hear that you spoke to our representatives and that they can do a much better job.
Thank you. Mr. Sanders?
Yeah, I want to come clean here. Nah, you're not going to hear that part. I was diagnosed with cancer last September. And so I didn't think that I certainly don't want any sympathy. And for the critics I have in the audience, that's 92% curable. So anyway, you may have seen some weight gain, you may have seen some puffiness, you may have seen blurriness of vision, morning sickness, irritableness, fatigue, anything I can excuse away, I'm blaming it on this. So I've got a doctor's excuse for all my bad behavior. Please forgive me. So with that said, no, it can't be no little secrets going around. Do you know he's got cancer? Whatever.
Okay.
Very curable. I do want something, and I'd ask, I hope that it would get into the paper, because this has been the problem. I'm very open and transparent. This has been the problem that we've had in many governments, and I noticed, quite ironically, our county commissioner has now left after the development agreement was discussed, and another developer also left. I find that very ironic that they were witnessing this, but here's where I'm at. The project is very good, very, very, very good. But there is a cost to it, and the public needs to be aware of what the cost is. And when I said $3 million, Mr. Allen said, I dispute that, but he never offered another number, because he's the one that submitted those numbers through the TIF, the valuations of the properties, 100-year lease nearly on the parking garage, and on and on. You heard it. I'd like for this to be publicized so that if the next, because I don't want people coming up to me a year from now and saying, you didn't do what you're supposed to do for the public. I said, yes, I did. If you want to play the tape back, I'll be glad to give you a copy, because I made every objection to everything I saw in the contract. And you know what? And I voted for it because we can undo these things if you vote for them. So I voted for it with exceptions. So I hope the public, if they read this article in the Bradenton Herald or other places on the television, that they would come back in and complain next week, next council meeting. You have to the next council meeting to undo what you've done. And I'm not suggesting we do that, but I'm suggesting that you're going to miss an opportunity to speak out. So don't tell me about this a year from now, that it was not, you wasn't given an opportunity. I don't think he's given an opportunity today, as this was the first item on the agenda in the new year under a new council with, and I question how it was done, because there was 3 agreements I had to read in less than 30 days, and one of them was just a couple of days ago. So this story may not be over. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sanders. Mrs. Coker?
Not Ms.
No,
Coker.
we're going back to in order now.
Thank you. Very excited to be joining the board, and I've got a long-standing love affair with the city of Bradenton and its people, and I hope to serve you proudly. And that's all I have.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Coachman?
There are advantages to being last. I just want to say it is absolutely an honor to be here, and I am looking forward to working with my mayor and other council members. I'm getting my feet wet, and today was definitely kind of a trial by fire. After the swearing in, a lot of people were still congratulating me, and now I know, though, there's something always behind that. They'll say, congratulations, but have you thought y'all need to work on this, and y'all need to stop spending money? You know, so I've already had a little indoctrination, and I'm really looking forward to this. And I want to also thank Chief Bevan. I had a little concern a few days ago, and she just readily responded and set my mind at ease. And I just feel that all the staff and all the departments are going to really be supportive of us.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Thank you. For my report, just kind of agree with a lot of things that were said up here. Mrs. Barnaby, it's very exciting for our fair that they're still having it. I think that's a great thing, but please be safe and social distance and go through that. I also want to bring up something that I had brought up a lot on the council, and I think some things in Mr. Roth, I just want you, if you can, pass along to the, on Ninth there in Neal Park, the, I guess it's the master, what do they call them, the garden master, or that. We had some issues at the beginning, but I think it's looking great. And I hope Jim probably sees that too at times when you have to go by it, but they're doing a great job at now keeping that up. And it's very visible for us on night, so.
Yeah.
So that community garden, I think, is working well now.
Actually, Bill Ackles deserves
Deserves some of that credit, yeah.
credit for that, because he's helping to monitor the private citizens with the extension service with the city. So Bill deserves a lot to
Good, I appreciate that, and it does look good, and it's a great thing for the community. So
It's a wonderful thing.
Right, so, that's all I have. I'm gonna kind of allow an exception here. I don't know that we did it wrong, but, I'm gonna let Glenn Gibolina come back up, because he's got on here for a comment. Glenn, you know, it should have probably been done at the beginning, but, because we say citizen comment on agenda or non-agenda, obviously, in other forms, but go ahead if you can.
Okay.
Quick as possible.
For the record, I really appreciate that, Mayor Brown. We brought up some great points. I really don't think this was advertised well enough. Here's my concern. This is a great, great project. It needs to move forward, but I think it can be tweaked. What scares the hell out of me is the 12 years. If you're gonna leave a legacy for attainable housing, and by the way, at $39,000, you're at 34% of your income, that's not affordable. But in 12 years, if my daughter wants to come down here and live, he can turn around and say, we're done. Now we're at $2,500. We're going to charge you $300 a month for the parking that I'm getting for $10, and we're going to sign this contract over. This is a bad deal. You should tie in the parking lot with the post office to the 12 years. I think it should be in perpetuity. I think if he's going to leave a legacy, then he should leave a legacy forever. Because in 12 years, now for the next 12 years, yeah, we've got workforce housing downtown. And I guarantee you I can get him the waiver for the school fees, because you've already sent a letter. Charlie Kennedy, who is on the Affordable Housing Board in Manatee, is the chair of the school board. He's all over this. I know you've been in conversations with Cynthia Saunders. She needs affordable housing. So there's $975,000 going to be waived. 1/30 of his cost. And I wish you would have been here to answer some of my questions. So the point being is 12 years, absolutely, it's a deal breaker. That is not the legacy this council wants to leave for the community. This needs to be in perpetuity. And as far as the post office, there's plenty of parking across the street. I don't even think that should have been on the table personally. But the market rent's $39,000, $1,100. You're not that far off from market rents. I just think this needs to be retweaked. The second and third revised agendas, not even a 3-day notice. You know, you can tweak that a little bit, a line here, a line two. But where you're doing major document changes in 2 and 3 revisions, you have to give the public a little notice. My last thought was he had all these meetings with the millenniums. Did he say, well, in 12 years, I hope you're making $200,000 because that in 12 years is going to be $2,500 a month. Parking, I just see that whole deal going out the window in 12 years. And that's not the legacy this council wants to leave. You told it as affordable and attainable housing now. That's short term. That's not long-term vision. You need to go back and revise this, and you got to say, you know what, do this in perpetuity. And, you know, he says, well, I need a 99-year lease on the land. No, you don't. If I got a 20-year lease on my mortgage and includes the land, in 20 years, the bank is satisfied. They could care less about the other 70 years. So don't be deceived. I think it can be tweaked better for the citizens, certainly for our millenniums. Thank you, Mayor Jean, for letting me come up. I really appreciate that.
All right, we'll go to department heads. Mrs. Beauchamp?
I have nothing to report, thank you.
Okay. Jim? Chuck? Nothing. Jim? Nothing. Chief?
Good morning, everyone. Almost afternoon. Just a few things to kind of catch you all up, and particularly for the new council members. Obviously, you have seen some correspondence from me, or communication from me, shift reports. know that if you don't get one for the day, it doesn't mean I forgot. It simply means that there was nothing pertinent on there that I felt you needed to know. I try to do it as a need-to-know basis, just not to clog you all with stuff. Same with press releases. I'll tell you the order of things is that typically you'll hear about it on a shift report. The next place you'll probably hear about it is on social media as the order of things goes. We usually do press releases after we post things on our social media. So by all means, make sure you're engaging with us and paying attention to all those areas, because if you want to know anything about us, you'll see it there. And we plan on a more robust, actually, effort on that in this coming year. The inauguration, I wanted to make sure you all knew that we are, as we always have for the past several inauguration cycles, sending a contingent of officers up there, along with, I believe, every other agency here in Manatee County, as well as most in Sarasota County. I've been on multiple phone calls discussing what we'll be participating in specifically. We've undergone training. This isn't new to us. We've done it before, although this one probably comes with a few different elements that we haven't had to deal with in the past, but just know that obviously we'll be represented well by the folks we're sending there, and we will be expecting their professionalism. We'll also, although we haven't completely rolled them out, be outfitting some of our folks out there with body cameras. You will see our body cameras slowly coming out on the street here within the next few weeks. I'll certainly let you all know when we completely flip that switch, and I can tell you that all of our folks who should have the body cameras have them on. It's, as we expected, been a little bit slower process than we had planned, just more of a technical related concerns and outfitting and upfitting. And I walked in today and there was this huge beast of a device right at the door that correlates with that. So, but we are pushing ahead and expect to have all of our body cameras out there within the first couple weeks of February. And so I'll be excited to talk to you all a little bit about that. And finally, Mayor Brown had indicated to me early on, I get up here and I usually talk about the bad things and crime and all those things. I don't normally talk about the good things, and he's challenged me with making sure that I promote that. And so I'm going to make it a point every time I get up here to tell you a good story. And this memo came across my desk yesterday, and I just wanted to share it with you. It's probably easier that I read it. I'll read fast. We had an Honoring the Badge event, as you know, here just a few weeks ago. And at that event, we give each officer a $50 gift card, and they go shopping with a particular person. Sergeant Shehorn had the occasion to go shopping with a 9-year-old girl. When the sergeant followed up with him the next day asking how his shopping experience had gone, he relayed that the girl had been abandoned by her mother and that her father had died. I then asked him if the girl had gone over her spending limit, which routinely happens at the event. Usually it's only a few dollars and the officer pays the difference. Sergeant Shehorn replied, "Well, yeah, a little bit," with a smile on his face. Intrigued by his response, I then asked what a little was. He then told me when he was talking to the girl, he learned that she did not have anything that she really needed in life. She had lost all of her possessions when her mother left. Sergeant Shehorn then took the little girl on a shopping spree. He bought her clothes, jewelry, and toys out of his own pocket. Sergeant Shehorn ended up spending over $500. He also met with the girl's current caregiver and told her he was going to gather up some of his daughter's outgrown clothing and bring it to her. I can't tell you how much that warms my heart. I just found out about this yesterday because I've challenged my folks. Stop sending me all the discipline memos, stop sending me all the things that I have to deal with as a chief, and start sending me more things I should smile about. We read about these in a lot of places. I wish I'd read about it more in my local newspaper because these acts of kindness happen all the time, and I don't think that our community hears enough about it. So can't tell you how proud I am to be a chief of police of this agency. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Chief. Mr. Rudisil,
I don't have anything, Mr. Mayor.
you need to pull the microphone up to you.
I'm in solidarity with you.
Mr. Callahan?
I have a couple of things. Just as updates for y'all.
One is on the search for the Planning Community Development Director. We've gotten all the information out to our consultant. Consultant has got that on the street. Typically what it does is it sits out there for about a month or more while he not only puts it out for general people, but the people he may contact directly or his known folks that he works with. Then probably in the second or so week of February, we'll get the results of just knowing how many people responded. And then through the month of March, he starts doing a lot of his work associated with those candidates. And I think that hopefully with any luck, 1st of April or so, we should be hopefully ready to go with someone. That's kind of the time frame that he laid out early on in the process. He's still on time with that process. So just wanted to let you know that's where it's headed. One comment just on, I don't want you to feel like things were due. There were no changes to any documents in the revisions. There was not a change in any revision. It was just as more information became available, it was added out and thrown out to you. Particularly the county agreement, which was a public record, was put there strictly to indicate that there was a land use development agreement through Manatee County, and that was probably the reason we didn't need to have one, because it was showing that was the sole purpose of that. It's not it's enforceable by us. Their agreement is enforceable by us, which says in our document, so it's just a case of information purposes. But there were no changes in any documents, and the reason we were waiting on, I didn't want to put out a document to you that had not been approved by the attorney. I wanted to make sure to continue that review and make sure that she had reviewed it before I put it on the agenda to just an abundance. If she had any concerns, I didn't want to do revisions as a result of attorney's revisions right away, so I waited until that came in before we put that forward. That's just record keeping. But one of the things that's come up, Glenn's here, it's great, just want to let him know, he has made public document requests, which are fine. We've tried to honor the things that we do have. As I indicated last year, when the request of surplus properties come up according to statute 166-0451, we have a requirement and had a requirement, which I talked to you all about last year, to have the public meeting talking about surplus properties. I'd indicated at that point in time we hadn't had those. Shame on us, we hadn't had those. And that we would be in the process of preparing that report for you guys to be able to have that public meeting to go over those surplus properties. What Glenn got as a public record was part of our process that Jesus prepared for me before he left, taking every one of our singular properties, going through them, classifying them by ID, by use, what we used them for, where the potential surpluses were, which is where he had seen that report. So what we do from here, according to statute, is we have the list of real property owned, which is a requirement. Now, make sure you understand, this is City of Bradenton, this is not CRAs. CRAs are not required by that statute. That's not but we have already previously done that for the CRAs because lists of surplus properties have been out there and people have bid on those. You're supposed to indicate whether it's vacant or improved, and you're supposed to indicate whether it's an appropriate use would be for affordable housing for those sites. We intend on doing that, having that meeting with you very quickly so that we can get past that requirement for it, but more importantly, so that everybody can be aware of what surplus properties may or may not be available. The key point and part of that is, it does not say you have to do anything with those. It says you may make those available for affordable housing, okay? Which I think is a great idea. It says you may. But if you have a use for a piece of property just because it's vacant and it's sitting next to your wastewater treatment plant, which we know is a piece of property we're saving for expansion, that does not make it an appropriate site. So we need to go through those things. We will review the book. We will do the resolution that's necessary indicating which properties are and should be made available for affordable housing. Then it will be your decision as to how you handle those. But that's a process we want to go through, and it is a public process that is required to happen, and we intend on doing that very shortly. So wanted to address Glenn since he was here. It's his concerns. He understands it. We're all aware of it. And I think from your perspective, you are doing a ton of things to promote affordable housing. The reason the statute's in here, because there are some people that do nothing towards that. There are communities and counties that do almost nothing. We as a city have done a lot through the Affordable Housing Committee. We will continue, hopefully through the new planning director, to be able to upgrade those incentives, go through that process. do the things that we did requesting the school board to aid and assist in that, being able to promote affordable housing. We supported the 2 HTG requests. It looked like January 12th, the last time I looked, which was yesterday, there was going to be some sort of meeting of the FHFC, and we may see some result, whether we are positive or negative results on that fairly soon. So you're doing a lot of things. And those two things are very close. So I appreciate that. I just want to tell you what we're doing. Just reiterate where we are now. We still have a part of that process to complete, and we intend on doing that. And Sharon, did we need to talk about the 1/4 unused sick?
We did. I wasn't sure if you were ready to bring that forward.
This is just something, last year, in our rules and regulations, policies and procedures, we pay 1/4, allow you to cash out 1/4 unused sick or move that to vacation, okay? During the recession, we eliminated the option of paying it out, okay? Last year, you brought back that, knowing the pandemic was out there. Maybe it meant a little bit of extra money for people during this time to be able to take, if they didn't take a day off, pay them for 24 hours or allow them to cash in or allow them to move it to vacation. We think we would like to be able to still offer that again this year, knowing the circumstances really aren't any different this year than they were last year, to give our employees the opportunity to cash out the 1/4 unused sick, as opposed to, and this is only on your, this is not your total 1/4, this is only on your annual accumulation. So if you accumulated potentially 96 hours and you didn't use any, potentially 24 hours could be either moved to vacation or cashed, or left in sick. We're looking for your approval to be able to do that again this year. Last year, it cost us about $60,000 to do that. It could be more, but our history is not everyone cashes it in. If everybody was to do it, it'd be about $150,000, but the number was about the same last year, and 61,000 took advantage of that. $61,000 used that. So we're looking for your approval to be able to do that again.
Right here.
Move to approve the,
Hold on.
Well, you need to make a motion, you need to have a second, and then you can do discussion by parliamentary procedure.
All right.
All right, so I have a motion. Do we
I'll have a second.
Okay, under discussion, Mr. Sanders?
Now that I've been told parliamentary procedure and ethics class, I think I'm deserving of a comment. So that's not funny.
No, I'm
Please,
just,
please, we're gonna have some decorum in here.
Don't do that to me.
Talk to the discussion point, don't disrespect another council person.
Well, that was what was
Mr. Sanders,
happening.
please just talk. You know,
Yeah,
And I will control this meeting, so please respect the chair.
you're threatening me, thank you.
I'm not threatening you at all, sir.
That's exactly what you did. Other cities, do they offer cash out, or you have to take it? In private practice, you know, generally they don't offer a cash, you have to take it. But I understand that COVID has changed some rules, but hopefully that's going to be behind us. Generally, as a rule, when you have vacation, you have to use it or lose it.
Yeah, this is not vacation, this is sick time.
I mean, sick time.
No, most municipalities allow you to accumulate vacation and sick time. What they do is have a cap on if it is paid out at some point in time in the future. Our trigger for paying out in the future is retirement. Okay? If you meet normal retirement, then sick time is paid out at 1/2 your total. When you meet retirement, you would pay out 1/2 to the potential person. Vacation is a different issue. When you leave with accumulated leave, you get paid it. You have earned that, you get paid it. Sick is the policy is you have to make normal retirement to be able to get any sort of sick time payout. Except for, historically, what we did is this helped keep those sick balances down so that you may not be paying it in the future at 1/2. You're paying it at this point in time at 1/4. It's most municipal governments do that. It is pretty standard practice for this type of scenario. Now, I don't know about the paying of 1/4, but that's been a city policy since before I was here. That's been what they used to have done. And it's been approved by council as that We just came off of it during the recession because we were a little cash strapped at that point in time. We came off it during the recession to hold back, and then we started back up again last year.
Ms. Barnaby?
Mr. Callahan, we have several hundred employees that fall under union regulations. How does this does this affect, does this not affect, what does this do?
It generally says in their unions, you follow city policy and procedure. If the city policy and procedure on these is such that, you know, we would ask them, but very seldom has anybody ever come up and said, oh, gee, no, I don't want to take advantage of a good thing if it's afforded to us.
I think the chief would like to
I
comment
think
here.
I could probably answer this question, maybe not over the past 5 years, but prior to this, I was involved in the collective bargaining on behalf of the city of St. Pete. So we would research this. This is actually a very normal thing. It would be used to attempt to reduce use of sick time by the employee if at the end they realized that there was a potential to get some extra dollars in their pocket or more vacation time. This is something that a lot of municipalities, I will tell you, at least in Wells County, I know a few here in Sarasota and Manatee do it. So it's actually a pretty commonplace, and it's meant as an incentive. In fact, some of my folks saw that last year as an incentive to not use, vacation time to the degree because they realized that it could help financially. And I will tell you that that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. So I thought that.
And Mr. Callahan, would it also possibly save on some overtime that we would have to pay?
This is sick time. I don't know that that's the case. One of the things you look at is we did it for some of the purposes that were there to keep down accumulation of super large balances, and certainly for people who were never intended on retiring from here. It was a way to be able to get a little bit of help during that time. It was a benefit. There was no doubt it was a benefit. I think the flip side of what Chief says is, to be perfectly honest, part of it is right now we don't want you getting rid of your sick time because we don't want somebody going out on COVID or whatever else and not having sick time available. That's why we do it kind of after the fact and not before. You don't do it ahead of time. It's for people that haven't used it. We want to make sure that sick time is there for the folks. This is a case of where people who haven't used it and know that it's going to go away at some point in time get the opportunity. It's relatively, I want to say minor. It's $60,000, maybe $100,000, but it is considered a benefit. That's all it is. Like I said, it was prior practice. It's in the, if you look back in the original Blue Book, it's been in there forever. We just altered it a little bit during recession just to get away because of cash.
Mr. Sanders had his hand up.
I would like to see us put this on the agenda rather than open discussion. It seems like it should be an agenda item that we have time to think about it before we do.
That's fine. We brought it forward just because of the timing of making the payments. We look at trying to get it to them. We can carry it forward. It's not a huge issue if the rest of council wants to do that. Either way, we just want a determination, because what happens is we have to go out and notify every person as to what their decision is before you can put it on a payroll. So that had to happen now if it was going to make next payroll. If it's not going to make, if we don't do it for 2 more weeks, then it'll be another 2 weeks out after that before we actually get them the funding. That's the key to it.
We can wait.
All right, so do we pull them out?
If the desire is to wait, we can absolutely wait. If it's not, I mean, this is 100% your decision. This is not a public decision. This is not. It is 100% your decision.
I'm more than happy to, I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm more than happy to have it be an agenda item if that makes everyone comfortable. And I also want to say that, Mr. Sanders, I thought you were making a joke, and I did not mean to disrespect you.
Thank you.
And I'm willing to withdraw my motion.
Pull the motion in a second and then have it on.
We were hesitant on just bringing it up, and that's why I asked, I think, Sharon, do we want to bring it up or do we not? We talked about whether it should go on the agenda or not go on the agenda.
It always takes us to the last minute because we try to get some kind of an idea how much sick leave has been left at the end of the year so we can do a number calculation for you and let you know the impact. So that's why we really didn't have time to get it on the agenda. Yesterday was the payroll that we used the numbers from. So last night, our payroll administrator figured out the actual impact for you all. So that's why it came up late.
All right, we appreciate that. Anything else, Mr. Callahan?
No, sir.
All right, I got just one comment before we go to Mr. Callahan. Stay up there, please.
Friday was Mr. Callahan's 25th year with the city, so I'd just like to thank him publicly. And, you know, I mean, there's times that we all agree or disagree, but thank you for what you've done for our city, and the institutional knowledge that you have for our city is greatly appreciated. And I mean, and obviously with the announcement you made a few months back about retiring in June, you know, I saw today that some of that's going to be greatly missed, but hopefully not gone. But I would like this council to start thinking about it, and we will bring it up in the near future about where we go forward with the administrator position and how we do that, instead of waiting till the last minute.
I agree.
And then throwing us behind the 8 ball on that. So, but that will be coming up, but I just wanted to say that publicly. Thank you for your service and what you've done, even though it's a little longer than 25 from some.
6 months extra.
Yeah, 6 months extra, so, but thank you for what you've done in being a steward to our city.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And one thing, I mean, that is true, you need to decide which way you're going. I'd also like at a workshop for y'all to reconsider the organizational chart that we talked about. You basically approved November last. I mean, we're talking almost well over a year ago, the organizational chart where council said, yes, go ahead and go do that. We didn't because of COVID. I think you need to readdress that organizational chart and where that puts us, and that also plays into the administrator position as
And
well.
we have 3 new council people that weren't
Right.
there for that, so that would be good to have a discussion.
Yeah.
Speaking of workshops, obviously I have a direction that I want to kind of push forward a little bit for this council and get your thoughts and ideas on that. So, I mean, I could probably schedule 10 workshops, 10 work days in a row, but I don't think we want to do that. I think we're roll it out a little slower, but obviously today I've seen that we may have to start rolling things out a little quicker to discuss them. I mean, the parking garage is a huge discussion of retail and going through things, so, you know, and then others, things that we've come out today. And I would also appreciate, from my standpoint, as the mayor and working through the agenda, we will try to bring these things to make them agenda items. So it isn't any gotcha moments, and I would appreciate if the council, in their comments, wouldn't try to put any gotcha moments for the staff in their council comments. If there's something you think's important, please bring it up and let's put it on the agenda. You can get with me and the week before how we do that, and we'll work it. Just a final kind of comment from the mayor's office is that Kelly, my administrative assistant, is available to you if you need any help from the standpoint of learning things, reports, different things in that. She is available. We're making that to help you out. So please utilize her in any way you can. And she's glad to do it, and we're glad to make that offer to you. So we're there to help. So thank you, Mr. Callahan. That's all I have. Mr. Sanders?
About the workshops, I think that's a council decision, not administrative or mayor decision.
Well, I'm hoping that this council will work with us together, because again, I've got some things that we've talked about, have gone through, that we will bring up, and I think it's through the administration of the mayor's office that it will be important to work together on that. And if you want to have workshops and of course the coordination of it, I'd be happy to talk with any of you about what we want to talk about there. But I think it's important that we work together on that and a direction for our city to go to be positive. And, you know, even though we may disagree at times, I still think we have the same heart going forward with our city.
Well, I don't disagree with what the statement you made. I just think that the council needs to have the right to have or not have one based on the vote.
Well, and I agree with you. If we want to have.
Well, we already got one
workshop-
scheduled, nobody
Right.
asked me about it.
Well, I mean, that's what we're going to talk about at this workshop for going
Yeah.
forward. There's going to be a lot of things that we're going to discuss.
Talk
And we
about
can have that very open discussion at that workshop, at the direction that this council and the mayor's office want to go forward, to progress our city and to have positiveness and working together.
Fine.
Well, all right,
I'm not done.
okay.
I won't be here the next CRA meeting in the 25th, 3rd.
27, I think.
So I would ask that you not vote on this development agreement with CRA funds until I'm present. I can't make you do it, but I'm asking you to defer that. And thank you for the Walters ink pen. Thank you.
Is there anything further from the council or staff? And we will be adjourned.